Chapter 1. Pingyang Town was one of the many small towns under the jurisdiction of Zhonglang City. It also belonged to the country of Deqi. At this moment, a troop of cavalrymen slowly walked into the town. The leader was clad in armor and looked resolute. He was Chao Gang, one of the 5 wolf guards of Zhonglang City. The other person was a delicate-looking young man. He was dressed in a green robe and exuded a scholarly aura. The young man's name was Su Zimo. He was the second young master of the Su family in Pingyang Town. He was famous for being a high scholar at the age of 17. Second young master Su is different from the scholars that I have known in the past. Although you look weak, your horsemanship is excellent. You are not inferior to my guards, Chao Gang said. Lord Chao, you flatter me. Su Zimo smiled. Elder brother has been in the horse business. I have been with horses since I was young and have some foundation. Moreover, Zhui Feng is quite intelligent. As he said that, Su Zimo patted the handsome horse that he was riding on. The horse named Zhui Feng seemed to understand Su Zimo's praise. It raised its head and snorted. There was a hint of intelligence in its eyes. At this moment there was a commotion at the side. Someone shouted, "Oh no, I heard that the girl from the Shen family has been chosen by an immortal and is going to join an immortal sect." The girl from the Shen family? Which Shen family? It's Shen Mengqi, the one who is discussing marriage with second young master Su. The news spread very quickly. The surrounding people had already started discussing. Many of them looked at Su Zimo strangely. Immortal? Su Zimo muttered softly. His understanding of immortals was still based on those illusory legends. Could a human's power summon the wind and rain, burn the sky and boil the sea? Su Zimo did not believe that there were immortals in this world without seeing it with his own eyes. Upon hearing the word immortal, Chao Gang's body trembled. His expression changed and a tinge of fear flashed past the depths of his eyes. However, Su Zimo frowned and was deep in thought. He did not notice it. Right at this moment, a rainbow light suddenly flashed across the sky. It was extremely fast. Just as it passed over the heads of Su Zimo and the others, it turned back and stopped in midair. Everyone subconsciously looked up and saw 3 people standing in the void without any support. It was as if there was an invisible force supporting them. Su Zimo's expression changed slightly. Immortals. This kind of means was simply not something that could be understood or touched by the people of the mortal world. The gods have appeared. Immortal, please bless me. The densely packed crowd all knelt on the ground at the same time. Their faces were filled with reverence as they prayed. Chao Gang's movements were extremely fast. He dismounted from his horse and knelt on the ground. He shouted loudly, "Commoner Chao Gang of Zhonglang City pays his respects to the immortal." Chao Gang's actions shocked Su Zimo. As one of the 5 wolf guards, Chao Gang had great power within a few hundred miles of Zhonglang City. However, even he knelt on the ground without hesitation when he saw the immortal. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo stood on his horse like a crane among chickens. He was extremely eye-catching among the black mass of people who knelt on the ground. There was an omnipresent pressure. Su Zimo was silent for a while. He leaped down from Zhui Feng and looked up. In mid-air, the man in the middle was wearing an aquamarine long robe. He had a cold expression and his long and narrow eyes looked down at the people beneath his feet. There was a sense of arrogance between his brows. There was a man and a woman standing beside the man in the aquamarine robe. They were all from Pingyang Town. The man was called Zhou Dingyun. He was a notorious ruffian in the town. He bullied people and did all kinds of evil. 2 years ago, he was sent to prison by Su Zimo. Now, he was brought out by the man in the aquamarine robe. Su Zimo frowned slightly. Given Zhou Dingyun's character, how could he have the chance to enter an immortal sect? If Zhou Dingyun were to become an immortal, how many people would suffer? Su Zimo shifted his gaze and looked at the young lady in mid-air. The young lady's name was Shen Mengqi. She was in the prime of her life. Her skin was whiter than snow and she had a gentle temperament. Through Shen Mengqi's eyes, Su Zimo knew her feelings for him. The promise that they had made in the past was worthless in the face of the legendary immortal fate. Su Zimo did not expect that the 2 of them would meet again under such circumstances. One was high and mighty while the other was standing in the mortal world. Shen Mengqi was also looking at Su Zimo. She was looking at this man whom she had worshipped so much. In her heart, Su Zimo was omnipotent. He was enlightened at the age of 3, understood the 4 books and 5 classics at the age of 7, passed the county-level examination at the age of 12 and passed the provincial-level examination at the age of 17. Such a genius was unprecedented in the country of Duqi. He would definitely become an important official in the future. Su Zimo did not learn martial arts due to the obstruction of the eldest young master of the Su family. However, Shen Mengqi believed that if Su Zimo learned martial arts, he would also be conferred the title of king and minister. But now Shen Mengqi realized that she was wrong. Su Zimo's achievements belonged to the mortal world after all. They were not worth mentioning in the eyes of immortals. With just one opportunity, she already had the qualifications to look down on Su Zimo. "Mortal, why don't you kneel?" This question was like a sudden clap of thunder that suddenly exploded in Su Zimo's ears. It made him dizzy and his limbs weak. He almost collapsed on the ground. In the face of a legendary immortal, there was nothing wrong with kneeling on the ground. However, the attitude of the green-robed man, which was close to bullying, aroused the injustice in Su Zimo's heart. This injustice came from the determination in Shen Mengqi's eyes. It came from the doubt of the immortal's choice of disciple. More importantly, it came from the pride in Su Zimo's bones. Su Zimo took a deep breath and suppressed the irritation in his chest. He said loudly, "I have scholarly achievements. I don't even need to kneel when I see the king of Duqi. Why should I kneel to you? If you want me to kneel, I will not kneel." The so-called scholarly achievements were, of course, just an excuse by Su Zimo. Under the shroud of the green-robed man's fierce aura, the surrounding mortals were as silent as cicadas in winter. They did not even dare to raise their heads. However, Su Zimo confronted the immortal with the body of a mortal. His aura was not weak at all. "Indeed, you are a foolish mortal." The corners of the green-robed man's mouth curled up slightly. His eyes were cold as he said lightly, "In that case, your scholarly achievements are invalid from today onwards." Although his tone was calm, no one doubted it. The green-robed man continued, "If any vassal state dares to accept this person as an official, they will be the enemy of the iridescent cloud's palace, perfected Song Lang." Hearing the words iridescent cloud's palace and perfected Song Lang, Chao Gang, who was kneeling on the ground, was shocked. He quickly replied in a trembling voice, "Rest assured, perfected Song Lang. As long as he is in Duqi, Su Zimo will be a lowly commoner for the rest of his life." A lowly commoner for the rest of his life. With just a few words, Su Zimo's fate was decided. A trace of pity flashed across Shen Mengqi's eyes. On the other hand, the scoundrel Zhou Dingyun looked excited. Su Zimo looked very calm, as if he had not suffered a blow. After a while, Su Zimo laughed self-deprecatingly. "This scholarly achievement is so cheap. What's the use of it?" Perfected Song Lang's long and narrow eyes gradually narrowed into a line. There was a cold glint in his eyes. Su Zimo's provocation made him want to kill him. At this moment, Zhuai Feng, who was originally standing beside Su Zimo, suddenly became irritable and restless. The horse's hooves rubbed against the ground as it neighed incessantly. Su Zimo remained calm and collected, but he was shocked. Zhuai Feng had reacted this way when he was in danger a few times. "It's actually a psychic beast. How dare it be noisy in front of me?" Perfected Song Lang shouted softly. He stretched out his index finger and pointed at Zhuai Feng. Before Zhuai Feng could react, a red light had already entered Zhuai Feng's body. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Zhuai Feng's body suddenly emitted a scorching flame, which instantly engulfed its entire body. Whoosh! The flame was so strong that it wanted to engulf Su Zimo as well. Although Su Zimo was not as weak as ordinary scholars, he had never seen such a treacherous method. He was completely stunned on the spot. Seeing that Su Zimo was about to be engulfed by the flame, Zhuai Feng let out a sorrowful cry and galloped away like a madman. The crowd was so frightened that they scattered in all directions. Zhuai Feng had only run a few steps before it fell to the ground weakly. In the blink of an eye, it was burned into a pile of dust, leaving not even its bones behind. The whole process only took a few breaths. This flame definitely did not belong to the mortal world. It was conceivable that if Zhui Feng had not run away in time, Su Zimo would not have been spared if he had been touched by even a little bit of the flame. What a sentient steed that protected its master. What a pity, Wolfguard Chaogang lamented. A gentle breeze blew and Zhui Feng's ashes drifted in the air for a long time, as though it was bidding farewell to its master. Su Zimo looked ahead in a daze. His eyes were red and he looked like he had lost his soul. It was a heart-wrenching sight. A long time later, Su Zimo's eyes regained clarity and he let out a long breath. Raising his head once more, he stared at perfected Song Lang in midair expressionlessly and said calmly, "If you don't kill me, you will definitely regret it in the future." Upon hearing that, everyone looked at Su Zimo as though they were looking at a dead man. How smart! Wolfguard Chaogang was the only one who praised internally. Perfected Song Lang already has killing intent. Just now he attacked with the intention of killing this lad. If he did not say that, this lad would not have been able to escape death. However, after saying that, given this immortal's pride, he would definitely not attack him again. Before Chaogang could finish his thoughts, Perfected Song Lang sneered, "Mortal, you are just a lowly commoner without a spirit root. You will never be able to cultivate in this lifetime. In terms of potential, you are not even comparable to that beast just now. Do you think you are worthy of making me regret?" Su Zimo did not refute. Silently, he picked up a handful of Zhui Feng's ashes from the ground and turned to leave. A look of mockery flashed across Perfected Song Lang's eyes as he said indifferently, "Even if a lowly ant's heart is yearning for the sky, how can he touch the wings of an eagle?" Seeing Su Zimo leave safely, Zhou Dingyun was indignant. If not for this lad, he would not have suffered so much in prison. At the thought of this, Zhou Dingyun's eyes turned venomous and his expression changed. No one knew what he was scheming. Looking at Su Zimo's lonely back view, Chan Mengqi sighed in her heart. In less than an hour this man had lost everything he had. Perhaps he was only left with that pitiful pride. However, what was the use of that? Sai's second young master Su has lost his scholarly achievements and has become a lowly commoner. He is no different from a useless person. The two young masters of the Su family, one of them is a scholar and the other is a martial artist. These years they had the potential to rise up. Who would have thought that they would suffer such a setback? Luckily, first young master Su is a Khanate expert. What's the use of being a Khanate expert? That Wolfguard Lord Chao is also a Khanate expert. When he saw the immortal, he was so scared that he knelt on the ground. Based on what the immortal said, second young master Su does not even have the right to cultivate. I'm afraid he will die of depression in the future. Su Zimo lowered his head and walked forward silently as if he did not hear the discussions around him. "Zimo, wait up." This voice was so familiar. However, the way she addressed him was a little strange. Before today, the girl behind him had always called him Brother Zimo intimately. Su Zimo did not stop and continued walking forward. Chun Mengqi caught up with him. There was some sweat on the tip of her nose. She frowned slightly and panted, "Zimo, have you become stupid from studying? Just now, what's the big deal about kneeling down?" "It's not a big deal. It's just that I don't want to," Su Zimo said calmly. Su Zimo did not stop walking. Chun Mengqi was already angry. Hearing this, she was even more furious. She took a few steps forward and blocked in front of Su Zimo. "Su Zimo, wake up." Chun Mengqi stared into Su Zimo's eyes and said loudly, "Don't think about revenge. That's impossible. You're already 17 years old. You've already missed the best age to cultivate martial arts. You don't have spirit roots and can't cultivate at all. Even if you can reach the postnatal or Khanate realm in the future, you'll only have the strength of a mortal. You won't be able to withstand a single blow from an immortal." Su Zimo was silent. He only looked at Chun Mengqi quietly. Chun Mengqi could not resist Su Zimo's gaze. She lowered her head and said softly, "We did have an agreement. I'm also grateful to you for helping the Shun family all these years. However, that's all in the past. Moreover, from today onwards we're people from two different worlds." Su Zimo smiled and raised his eyebrows slightly. "Is your world that great?" Chun Mengqi said. "Zhou Dingyun and I will follow the perfected and leave Pingyang town tomorrow. Today I'm here to bid you farewell. I don't want to argue with you about these meaningless things." "Go ahead. I won't send you off. We'll meet again if fate allows. Su Zimo was dispirited. He walked past Chun Mengqi and continued walking. Just as the two of them brushed past each other, Chun Mengqi murmured softly, "Our fate has come to an end. We're separated by immortals and mortals. I'm afraid we won't meet again." Su Zimo paused in his footsteps. In the end, he left without saying a word. Chapter 2. This blow had completely overturned Su Zimo's view of the world. So, there really were immortals in this world. Furthermore, the power of any immortal could surpass that of a major country, not to mention the iridescent clouds palace behind them. To Su Zimo, losing his scholarly honors was nothing. However, he had been with Zhui Feng since he was young. In his eyes, Zhui Feng was no longer a horse but a family member. Not long after, Su Zimo arrived at his own residence. This residence was not big and was very quiet. There were only a few rooms, and it was a reward given to Su Zimo by his elder brother, Su Hong. When he passed the county scholar examination at the age of 12, Su Zimo carried Zhui Feng's ashes to a peach tree in the middle of the courtyard and buried it. "Zhui Feng, I planted this peach tree personally. From now on, the two of you will be companions. One day, I will sprinkle perfected Song Lang's blood on your ashes." Su Zimo's eyes were slightly bloodshot. He stood quietly beside the peach tree for a long time before turning around slowly. As he turned around, Su Zimo saw a person. It was a woman in a blood-red robe. She was extremely beautiful. She was not coquettish, not flamboyant, and did not wear any makeup. It was as though she had walked out of a painting. Su Zimo had once sighed. As the ancient saying went, "Hibiscus from clear water is a natural carving." This must be the case. She was wearing a blood-red robe, which didn't match her beautiful face. However, this contrast formed a unique temperament on her body. 2 years ago, Su Zimo returned from a trip and saw this woman unconscious near Songlang mountain range. He was worried that she would be eaten by wild beasts and brought her back. Not long after arriving at the residence, the red-robed woman woke up. She looked fine, but no matter how Su Zimo asked her name and where she lived, she did not say a word. The red-robed woman stayed here for 2 years, and Su Zimo had never chased her away. There were no servants in this residence, and Su Zimo was not used to being served. He took care of his 3 meals a day. In his opinion, one more person was nothing. It was just another portion of food. For the past 2 years, every time Su Zimo finished cooking, he would deliver a portion to the red-robed woman's door, knock on the door, and then leave. The red-robed woman rarely showed her face. Su Zimo had never seen her leave the mansion. The conversation between the two of them did not exceed 5 sentences. Not to mention the people in Pingyang town, even the Su residents did not know of her existence. The girl's name was Dai Yu. She was reclusive and didn't speak much. Su Zimo's understanding of her was limited to this. Su Zimo did not know when Dai Yu had stood behind him, but today the way Dai Yu looked at him was a little strange, indescribable. Su Zimo nodded at her and returned to his room. After 2 years of interaction, both parties were already used to this kind of greeting. Moreover, Su Zimo knew that even if he spoke, Dai Yu would ignore him. Su Zimo closed the door tightly and took out a sharp knife that was about a foot long from the corner. It was rusty, and he did not know how long it had been since he last used it. Su Zimo searched for a long time and found a whetstone. He sprinkled some water on it and started sharpening the knife with a dark face and cold gaze. Not long after, Su Zimo seemed to have thought of something. He pushed open the door and looked at Dai Yu in the courtyard. "Miss Dai, rest early today. No matter what you hear at night, do not walk out of your room." Dai Yu did not comment, and her expression was cold. For some reason, a strange thought appeared in Su Zimo's mind. In terms of aura and realm, Dai Yu was more like an immortal. She was elegant and did not care about anything. Why would a real immortal get angry and hurt a mortal because of whether or not he knelt? Of course, this thought flashed past Su Zimo's mind, and he did not take it to heart. Su Zimo took out a jar of wine from the cellar in the courtyard and opened the mud seal. Along the way, he purposely spilled some of the strong wine that led to his room. At the door, Su Zimo released his hand and the wine jar fell to the ground. The wine splattered everywhere and gave off a strong smell. Dai Yu had witnessed the entire process, and a faint smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Su Zimo walked into the room. The door was not closed and was left ajar. Coming to the corner, Su Zimo continued sharpening his knife. Tonight was destined to be a restless night. Su Zimo was waiting for someone. Night fell and the moon was dark and the wind was strong. A sneaky figure sneaked into Su Zimo's residence along the high wall. When he landed, there was a huge commotion and the black figure hurriedly scurried to the corner. He was quite agile. After a while, the courtyard was quiet and there was nothing unusual. The black figure then stood up and took out a dagger that was shining coldly from his waist. Through the cold gleam of the dagger, one could vaguely tell that this person was Zhou Dingyun, who had joined the immortal sect together with Chan Mengqi. Zhou Dingyun was a vengeful person. Initially, he was still a little wary of the Su family and Su Zimo's scholarly reputation. Now that Su Zimo had become a lowly commoner and he had joined the immortal sect and soared to the top, how could he let Su Zimo off so easily? Furthermore, as long as he killed Su Zimo secretly tonight, he would leave Pingyang Town with perfected Song Lang the next day. Even if the Su family realized this, they would not dare to look for him. Otherwise, if perfected Song Lang was enraged, the entire family would be annihilated. Zhou Dingyun did not have any martial arts skills, but he was strong. He thought that it would be easy for him to deal with a weak scholar. After taking a few steps carefully, Zhou Dingyun smelled a faint fragrance of wine. He looked around and saw a broken wine jar at the door of a room. Zhou Dingyun was relieved. He smiled sinisterly and said, "You have not experienced any hardships and yet you still want to drown your sorrows in alcohol. You must be dead drunk now. That's good. I will break the tendons in your arms and legs and torture you slowly." Zhou Dingyun swaggered to the door of the room. He saw that the door was ajar and looked in through the gap. There seemed to be a person lying on the bed. However, the light was weak and he could not see clearly. Zhou Dingyun did not think too much. He pushed the door open with a sinister expression and darted in. The smell of wine in the room was even stronger. Zhou Dingyun frowned and crept to the side of the bed. Just as Zhou Dingyun reached the side of the bed, a shadow walked out silently from behind the door. It was like a ghost from the netherworld. All of a sudden, a cold gleam flashed in the darkness. Before Zhou Dingyun could react, he felt a slight chill on his neck and there was a faint prickling pain. A cold voice rang in his ears. "Move and I will kill you." All of a sudden, a chill ran down Zhou Dingyun's spine and all the hair on his body stood up. Even if Zhou Dingyun had 1,000 pounds of strength, he could not exert any of it. He knew very well that the thing hanging on his neck was definitely a sharp weapon. Could easily pierce his throat. You who are you?" Zhou Dingyun panicked. He felt as if his throat had been pierced and a warm liquid was sliding down his neck into his chest. This feeling was terrifying. It was as if his life was slowly draining away, and he could not do anything about it. Zhou Dingyun was caught off guard. He felt that his hair was suddenly pulled up by force and was pulled to the back. There was a tearing pain on his scalp. It was as if his scalp was being pulled off. "Ah!" Zhou Dingyun cried out in pain. Under the stimulation of the intense pain and the threat of death from the sharp blade, Zhou Dingyun's legs went soft. He fell to his knees with a thud. Zhou Dingyun had never felt that death was so close to him. "Look at who I am." The voice behind him sounded again. It was cold and eerie like a malicious spirit from hell. Zhou Dingyun maintained a strange posture. He tilted his head back and tried to open his eyes wide to look up. What he saw scared Zhou Dingyun out of his wits. In the darkness, Su Zimo's face was gloomy. There was a murderous aura between his eyebrows. He did not look like a scholar at all. His eyes were frighteningly bright. His gaze seemed to be sharper than the sharp blade in his hand. At this moment, Zhou Dingyun truly felt Su Zimo's murderous intent and determination. Oh no! Su Zimo has lost his scholarly achievements and become a lowly commoner. He really wants to kill me. No, I'm about to join the immortal sect. I can't die. In a flash, thousands of thoughts flashed through Zhou Dingyun's mind. In the end, all of them turned into a strong desire to survive. Zhou Dingyun said in a trembling voice, You can't kill me. If the immortal knows you won't be able to escape death, Su Zimo laughed. My life is worthless now. I'm about to drag someone down with me. Unfortunately, you've bumped into me. Don't blame me for that. Su Zimo's smile in the darkness was extremely terrifying in Zhou Dingyun's eyes. That calm and indifferent tone made Zhou Dingyun even more fearful. He's crazy. Su Zimo is crazy. Before he could finish his thought, Zhou Dingyun felt the sharp blade on his throat move again. Waves of piercing pain came and Zhou Dingyun's spirit collapsed instantly. Su, second young master Su, I beg you. Please spare my lowly life. I won't do any evil in the future. Second young master Su, I, Zhou Dingyun, swear to the heavens that if I'm lucky enough to join the immortal sect in the future, I won't seek revenge on you. Otherwise, I'll die from arrows piercing through my heart. Su Zimo did not say a word. He only squinted his eyes and stared at Zhou Dingyun. This silence made Zhou Dingyun even more anxious. Zhou Dingyun could not understand Su Zimo's thoughts at all. After an unknown period of time, just as Zhou Dingyun was about to lose all hope, he suddenly felt his scalp loosen. The sharp blade on his neck also moved away slowly. Get lost, Su Zimo said coldly. These two words were like heavenly music. Zhou Dingyun felt as though he had been pardoned. He rolled and crawled out of the room. Zhou Dingyun's palm covered the wound on his neck tightly. He ran to the courtyard and panted heavily. After escaping from death, Zhou Dingyun gritted his teeth. Evil thoughts arose in his mind again. Su Zimo is a scholar after all. He only took the initiative. How capable can he be? Zhou Dingyun's eyes were fierce. He could not help but turn around to look. He saw Su Zimo standing at the door. He was dressed in a green robe and held a foot-long sharp blade in his right hand. His eyes were cold. He looked like a ferocious tiger that was about to devour a man. He was murderous. There was a hint of mockery in his eyes. He seemed to have seen through Zhou Dingyun's thoughts. The evil thoughts that arose in Zhou Dingyun's mind disappeared instantly. Zhou Dingyun did not know how deep the wound on his neck was. He also did not know if Su Zimo had any other tricks up his sleeve. No matter what, he did not want to take any more risks. Revenge is a dish best served cold, Zhou Dingyun thought as he fled the place in a hurry. Chapter 3. A long time after Zhou Dingyun left, Su Zimo heaved a long sigh of relief. His face was slightly pale. Although the confrontation was short, it was extremely dangerous. Fortunately, everything was within his calculations. During his conversation with Shun Mengqi, Su Zimo heard a detail. She and Zhou Dingyun would only leave Pingyang town with perfected Songlang tomorrow. Su Zimo expected that Zhou Dingyun would definitely seek revenge tonight. It was not that Su Zimo did not think of asking the Su residents for help. However, other than implicating the Su residents, there would not be any change in the outcome. This was because Zhou Dingyun could not be killed. He was no longer the ruffian he used to be. He was someone who was about to join the immortal sect. Once he died, perfected Songlang would definitely come for revenge. Who would be able to stop him then? Su Zimo had never killed anyone before. However, just now when the sharp knife pierced Zhou Dingyun's throat, he did not feel nervous, timid, or fearful at all. Instead, he felt excited and eager to give it a try. He did not care if the sky collapsed or the earth collapsed tomorrow. He would just kill this bully and vent his anger. That would be a true satisfaction. Su Zimo's murderous aura was not faked. This was because just now, he almost could not control himself and stabbed Zhou Dingyun with the knife. For the first time, Su Zimo realized that the blood flowing in his body was not the blood of a scholar. It was more like the blood of an iron-blooded general on the battlefield. It was more like a ruffian in the pugilistic world. His scholarly achievements could not subdue the villain. Instead, it was the sharp knife in his hand that forced him to retreat. 10 years of hard work could not even compare to the sharpness of a sharp knife. Su Zimo laughed self-deprecatingly. A scholar is useless. That's all there is to it. Su Zimo returned to his room and threw the sharp knife aside. He lay on the bed but did not feel sleepy at all. He was worried about one thing. Given Zhou Dingyun's character, he would definitely return to Pingyang town after his cultivation was successful and avenge today's humiliation. That would be his doom. It might be a month, a year, or even 10 years. No matter what, Zhou Dingyun would definitely return. Su Zimo clearly knew this, but today he had no choice but to let the tiger return to the mountain. This was because if he killed Zhou Dingyun, he would die the next day. If he let Zhou Dingyun go, he would at least have a glimmer of hope. This glimmer of hope was that before Zhou Dingyun completed his cultivation and returned, he would be able to obtain the power to fight against him. However, was that even possible? What was a spiritual root? Why didn't he have a spirit root? Why couldn't one cultivate without spiritual roots? Su Zimo's mind was in a mess. He was filled with curiosity towards the immortal sect and confusion towards the future. Unknowingly, Su Zimo's eyelids grew heavy, and he fell asleep in a daze. Su Zimo had a strange dream. In his dream, an immortal whispered in his ear, "Do you want to cultivate?" Of course Su Zimo wanted to. There had never been a moment when he craved power as much as he did now. However, Su Zimo felt that something was wrong. Not long after, Su Zimo woke up with a start and sat up abruptly. His eyes were filled with shock and uncertainty. Unknowingly, his back was drenched in cold sweat. He finally realized what was wrong. This was not a dream. Someone was really asking him, "Do you want to cultivate?" Su Zimo got up and opened the door. He saw a scene that he would never forget for the rest of his life. Beside the peach tree in the courtyard, a beautiful lady in a blood-red robe stood there. Her beautiful eyes were rippling as she looked at him quietly. Unknowingly, the dark clouds had dispersed. The moonlight was like water, and the peach blossoms were falling. The lady stood in the midst of it, as if she was surrounded by mist. She did not look like a mortal. "Do you want to cultivate?" Dayu spoke again. Her voice was gentle with a hint of laziness. It was extremely pleasant to listen to. Su Zimo took a deep breath and gradually regained his composure. Countless questions surged in his heart, but he only said one word, "Yes." "All right, I'll teach you." Dayu's tone was casual, as if she was teaching Su Zimo how to dress and eat. Su Zimo walked down the stone steps and came before Dayu, gazing at those eyes that were as clear as spring water. Dayu was looking at him as well. After a while, Su Zimo realized that the lady before him was like a riddle that he could not see through at all. On the contrary, under Dayu's gaze, Su Zimo felt that he had nowhere to hide and there were no secrets to speak of. For a moment, Su Zimo's mind was enlightened. Dayu knew everything that happened to him today. She even knew what he was thinking. "I don't have spirit roots," Su Zimo finally spoke after a while. "There's a cultivation technique that doesn't require spirit roots." "What cultivation technique?" Su Zimo asked instinctively. "A cultivation technique of the demon race." Dayu's eyes shone with a strange light. Su Zimo's expression changed and he could not help but take half a step back. Even though he knew nothing about cultivation, Su Zimo knew that humans and demons were different. In the legends that he had heard, there were many stories of demons and demons harming people. Could it be that he had to cultivate a cultivation technique of the demon race and become a murderous demon? But after a short moment of silence, Su Zimo had already made up his mind. "I'll learn." Su Zimo did not know what he would become in the future, but he knew that if he did not grasp this opportunity, he would definitely die when Zhou Dingyun returned. There was no need to talk about the future. Dayu was not surprised, as if she had expected Su Zimo to agree. She continued, "If you want to learn this cultivation technique of the demon race, you have to promise me two things. First, don't ask about my background. I'll teach and you'll learn. Second, you can't tell anyone about this cultivation technique." "All right," Su Zimo nodded. Dayu continued, "There's one more thing. If you want to cultivate this cultivation technique, you will experience unimaginable dangers. You could lose your life at any time. Don't count on me to save you." Su Zimo smiled faintly. "Life and death are fated. Riches and honor are determined by the heavens. If you have any doubts, ask away." Dayu smiled. This was the first time in 2 years that Su Zimo saw Dayu smile. He was stunned and lost in thought. But in the blink of an eye, Su Zimo's eyes regained clarity. He asked in a low voice, "What is a spirit root? What is cultivation? Why did perfected Songlang say that one cannot cultivate without a spirit root? Cultivation can also be called cultivation. There are 3 ancient sects of cultivation in the human race: immortal, Buddhist and demon. The so-called spirit root is what the immortal sects call it. The Buddhist sects call it the wisdom root, and the demon sects call it the demon seed. As a human, if one does not have a spirit root, one cannot enter these 3 sections." Su Zimo understood that Dai Yu was implying that one does not need a spirit root to cultivate to become a demon. Dai Yu continued, humans have 5 senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. The spirit root is equivalent to the 6th sense, and is the key to sensing the spirit energy of the world. Su Zimo was enlightened. Without a spirit root, one cannot see the spirit energy of the world and naturally cannot cultivate. Su Zimo asked again, is there a difference in cultivation? What is perfected Song Lang's cultivation level? The immortal sex can be divided into qi condensation, foundation establishment, Jin Dan, and nascent soul. He is a Jin Dan cultivator. Demon, immortal, demon, and Buddhist cultivation all have different levels, but ultimately, they all lead to the same destination. But no matter what, the Tao of pills is a natural barrier that must be crossed. There are as many cultivators as there are stars in the sky, but half of them are stuck in the Tao of pills with no hope of ever reaching it. Cultivation is a heaven-defying act of seizing the destiny of the world. Stepping into the Tao of pills means breaking free from the shackles of the world for the first time, and one's lifespan can be extended to 500 years. As the saying goes, once a Jin Dan is swallowed, one will know that one's fate is not in the hands of the heavens. Dai Yu said, the cultivation technique of the demon race is divided into 9 sections. The first section is body tempering, the second is tendons transformation, the third is bone strengthening, the fourth is marrow cleansing, the fifth is organs refinement, the sixth is orifices clearing, and the seventh is core formation. If you want revenge, you have to cultivate to the 7th section. What is the name of this cultivation technique? Su Zimo asked. The mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Just by hearing these words, there was a murderous aura that was suffocating. The first section of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, body tempering, can be divided into 2 levels, skin tempering and flesh tempering. They correspond to different breathing techniques and movements. A demonic glint flashed across Dai Yu's eyes. Immediately after, a few long and mysterious incantations appeared in Su Zimo's mind. There were no celestial mountains and clear waters, no blessed grotto heavens, and no jade palaces. In this inconspicuous courtyard, under this peach blossom tree in full bloom, Su Zimo began his cultivation. It seemed casual and coincidental, as though it was fated. Before long, under Dai Yu's guidance, Su Zimo felt that his breathing was gradually different from usual. It did not seem like a human's breathing technique. After repeated corrections and practice, Su Zimo gradually found a feeling. Under this breathing technique, his body felt warm. His flesh and blood seemed to be burning and boiling, turning into endless essence that surged to the surface of his body. Su Zimo felt a tingling sensation on his skin. This skin-tempering breathing technique was taken from the Wild Bull Demon King. It can be practiced regardless of whether you are walking, sitting, or lying down. Bulls have a strong nature and tough skin. It is difficult to pierce through it with swords. You can slowly experience it yourself. Seeing that Su Zimo's breathing was gradually returning to normal, Dai Yu returned to the room and did not disturb him. Su Zimo was already immersed in this mysterious breathing technique. With every breath, he could clearly feel that his skin was becoming rougher, tougher, and stronger. The night gradually faded. However, Su Zimo did not know how much time had passed. He even forgot where he was and was only comprehending the incantations and breathing techniques. Just as the first ray of sunlight broke through the horizon, Su Zimo's body trembled. Suddenly, he felt as though there were 2 extremely hard objects sticking out of his head and shooting towards the sky. At this moment, Su Zimo seemed to have really transformed into an unparalleled bull demon, engulfing the heavens and earth. Dai Yu, who was originally sitting quietly in the room, was startled. Her gaze penetrated the wall and landed on Su Zimo. You actually comprehended the essence of it so quickly? Ha, you are a genius in demonic cultivation. It is not a waste for me to give you this opportunity. A look of admiration flashed across Dai Yu's eyes. Without any movement, she appeared in the courtyard in front of Su Zimo. Bam! Su Zimo, who was immersed in cultivation, was suddenly hit by an external force. He flew far away and naturally stopped his breathing. Su Zimo climbed up from the ground and felt a little dizzy. He looked around and saw that there was no one else in the courtyard. Su Zimo frowned and looked at Dai Yu, who was not far away. Do you want to die? Daiyu had long hidden the admiration in her eyes and said coldly, "What?" Suzimo was stunned. Daiyu waved her sleeves and a sparkling water mirror appeared in front of Suzimo. Suzimo was dumbfounded. This method was beyond his understanding. But when Suzimo saw his own appearance in the water mirror, the shock in his eyes turned into horror. How can this be? Suzimo's figure was thin to begin with, but in the water mirror, he was much thinner than before. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was as thin as a match. If not for those familiar facial features and the contours of his face, Suzimo would not have dared to believe that the person in the water mirror was himself. No matter what kind of cultivation it is, power will not be produced out of thin air. The immortal Buddhist and fiend sects absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth into their bodies. Some demons with some cultivation can also absorb the essence of the sun and moon to temper their bodies. But you have not reached that realm. Every time you breathe, you are refining the essence of your own flesh and blood. If you continue cultivating like this, you will die in less than 3 days. Then what should I do? Suzimo was shocked. Naturally, you will consume flesh and blood to replenish your essence before cultivating. At the mention of food, Suzimo's stomach began to growl. An uncontrollable sense of hunger engulfed his entire body, almost driving him crazy. Suzimo strode straight to the kitchen. In less than 15 minutes, everything that could be eaten in the kitchen was forcefully stuffed into Suzimo's stomach. Only then was his hunger slightly appeased. At this moment, Suzimo realized that he did not feel tired at all even though he did not sleep for the entire night. Instead, he was full of energy and his every move was filled with power. Suzimo picked up the thin metal basin beside him and pinched it hard with his fingers. On the metal basin there were a few clear fingerprints. Hiss! So powerful? Suzimo was secretly shocked. Suzimo was suddenly filled with confidence for the future. He had only cultivated for 1 night and there was already such a huge change. I think that even if Zhou Dingyun returns from the immortal sects, I will still have the ability to fight with him. At this moment, Suzimo still did not know how terrifying the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness was. This cultivation technique was actually a supreme demonic classic that could control yin and yang, seize creation, change heaven and earth and twist qi. It did not belong to this world. Chapter 4. On the second day, Suzimo went to the market early in the morning to buy a few cows as food for the next few days. After tidying up, Suzimo went to Daiyu's room and knocked on the door. "Miss Dai." The door opened slowly under Suzimo's knocking. Although the sky was already bright, the room was still pitch black, and there was a strange aura in it. "Come in." Daiyu's voice sounded in the room. Suzimo took a deep breath and stepped in. A strange feeling rose in his heart. Suzimo felt as if his body had passed through a layer of soft and cold water and entered another world. Suzimo looked over and could not help but be shocked. In front of him was not Daiyu's room but a space that was even more spacious than his mansion. The grass was green and there was a wooden bucket that was half the height of a person at the side. Daiyu sat on a huge green rock in a lazy posture. Although she was wearing a loose blood-red robe, it could not hide her slender figure. "This is..." Suzimo opened his mouth slightly. In this short day, Daiyu displayed many techniques that he could not understand. It was strange and fascinating. "This is Messen Sumer. You will understand when you reach a certain level. Don't think too much about it now," Daiyu said firmly. "This is the cultivation ground that I created. You will cultivate here from now on." Daiyu jumped down from the green rock and said, "I will teach you 3 moves called the 3 moves of the wild bull. When you practice, use them with the breathing and expiration method. The first move, plow heaven stride. Although there is only one move, it is ever-changing. It is the best way to cultivate leg techniques." As she spoke, Daiyu walked on the grass. Suzimo gathered his thoughts and opened his eyes wide. He focused on Daiyu's every step and movement, afraid that he would miss any details. After Daiyu took a few steps, Suzimo seemed to have grasped something. There didn't seem to be anything special about these steps, but upon closer inspection, one would realize that every step Daiyu took was as if she was wading through muddy water. Lowering his chest and straightening his back, bending his knees and lowering his elbows, he shifted his center of gravity downwards. His knees were no more than his toes, but his strides were extremely large. The distance between each step seemed to have been calculated precisely, without the slightest error. Dayu stopped and turned to look at Su Zimo. "You do it." Su Zimo was not in a hurry to practice. Instead, he stood in place and pondered for a long time before taking the first step. As soon as he took this step, Su Zimo could feel that something was wrong. Dayu came to Su Zimo's side. Expressionlessly, she stretched out her foot and kicked lightly at Su Zimo's leg. Hiss! Su Zimo sucked in a breath of cold air. Dayu's kick made Su Zimo feel as if someone had used needles to prick his thigh. The pain was unbearable. "Maintain this posture and continue," Dayu's cold voice sounded. Su Zimo lowered his head and realized that after being kicked by Dayu, just now he had taken a step that resembled the plow heaven stride. "She is correcting me." Su Zimo understood Dayu's intention immediately. Su Zimo pursed his lips and recalled the posture of the plow heaven stride carefully. Then he took a step with his left leg. "No!" Dayu's voice sounded the moment his foot touched the ground. Immediately after, Su Zimo felt a sharp pain in his left leg. Under the stimulation of this pain, Su Zimo subconsciously changed his footsteps. After taking a breather, Su Zimo took another step with his right leg. No! It was the familiar pain again. No! Pain! Continuous practice, continuous correction. At the end of the practice, Su Zimo could not even feel his legs. They were numb from Dayu's kicks. Su Zimo gritted his teeth and perspired profusely. He only had one thought left, which was to continue walking. After an unknown period of time, finally the word no, which sounded like a nightmare, stopped ringing in his ears. Su Zimo also realized that he had grasped the gist of the plow heaven stride. "Have you forgotten what I taught you last night?" Dayu's reminder made Su Zimo's eyes light up. While practicing the plow heaven stride, he began to combine it with the breathing and expiration method that he learned last night. Initially, Su Zimo could not link the two together well, and would often not be able to catch his breath after taking a step forward. However, as time passed, Su Zimo gradually found the compatibility between the breathing and plow heaven stride. This breathing technique coexisted with the plow heaven stride. As Su Zimo walked faster and faster, the numbness in his legs disappeared. His flesh and blood were burning continuously. His legs seemed to have infinite strength and his strides were getting bigger. Without any visible movement, he leaped 5 feet away with a stomp of his feet. Su Zimo knew that he had mastered it correctly and was overjoyed. However, for some reason, Su Zimo vaguely felt that his plow heaven stride seemed to be lacking some flavor. Instinctively, Su Zimo looked at Dayu, who was sitting on the green rock. He saw that Dayu had a look of disdain and her eyes were full of mockery. Su Zimo thought to himself, "I have already combined the breathing and expiration method with the plow heaven stride so skillfully. Why is she still looking down on me?" Su Zimo was angry. He purposely walked around the green rock continuously with the plow heaven stride, swaying in front of Dayu. After a while, Dayu sneered, "Are you really going to train yourself to be a cow that plows the land? This footwork is used to plow the sky, not to plow the land." Su Zimo was shocked and stopped in his tracks. Dayu floated down from the green rock and walked outside. She said coldly, "When you can understand the profound meaning of the two words plow heaven, you can be considered to have mastered the essence of this set of footwork." Su Zimo finally realized what his plow heaven stride was lacking. When he took a step, he was going to plow a ravine in the sky. How much courage and aura did he need to do that? No matter how skillful he was with this footwork, he lacked such courage and aura. He could only be a cow that plows the land in the mortal world. Plow heaven, plow heaven. Su Zimo pondered over it and gradually came to a realization. Dayu walked out of the room and came to the courtyard. She smiled faintly. She was no longer as cold and stern as she was in front of Su Zimo. To be able to cultivate to this stage in one day and one night, he seems to be a little more powerful than me back then. Under the peach tree, the woman's murmurs were faintly discernible and gradually dissipated with the breeze. For the past month, Su Zimo spent most of his time in the cultivation field practicing the plow heaven stride. He was searching for the general trend of the plow heaven and had gained a lot of insights. During this period, Su Zimo occasionally went out to buy some cattle and sheep. He vaguely heard some news. As the saying goes, when a man achieves the Tao, even his chickens and dogs ascend to heaven. The Shun family was originally an ordinary family in Pingyang town. However, during this period, many pugilistic experts had joined the Shun family. To everyone, the rise of the Shun family was inevitable. As long as Shun Mengqi succeeded in her cultivation, even if she returned home to visit once, it was enough to bring prosperity to the Shun family for generations. These pugilistic experts might also have a chance to join the immortal sects, even if they were to become servants in the immortal sections. On the contrary, the Su family had been in constant trouble recently. In Pingyang town there were originally 3 big family clans: the Zhao family, the Li family, and the Yang family. The Su family had risen in recent years. In addition, Su Hong was a Khanate expert and Su Zimo had scholarly honors. The 4 families coexisted peacefully. But now, Su Zimo's scholarly honors had been abolished and he had become a pariah. He had even offended immortals. These 3 families were eager to take over the Su family's business in Pingyang town. There had been a few conflicts that were neither big nor small. However, Su Zimo did not take these to heart. The housekeeper of the Su residence, Uncle Zheng, was in charge of the overall situation. There were also postnatal experts such as Lu Yu. Most importantly, Big Brother was not in Pingyang town. When Big Brother returned, given his thunderous means, he would definitely be able to suppress these rascals. This day, Dai Yu came to Su Zimo and said, "I will teach you the next 2 moves. When you practice, combine these 3 moves together." After pausing for a while, Dai Yu said calmly, "Most of the moves in the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness are killing moves. The next 2 moves are like that. Remember them." The first move, moon-gazing bovine. Dai Yu took a step forward, in the posture of plow heaven stride. Then, she leaned forward and her arms suddenly stretched out from her abdomen. She clenched her fists and her index finger protruded slightly. She stabbed forward and raised it slightly. At this moment, Dai Yu seemed to have disappeared from Su Zimo's sight. In her place was a domineering bull demon with its horns pointing at the sky. Dai Yu's arms were the horns. The protruding knuckles of her fists were the sharp tips of the horns. The moon-gazing bovine is based on plow heaven stride. First, step out with the momentum of plow heaven. Then, exert force from the waist and abdomen at the same time. Together with the punches, you must have the power to push upwards and also to lift upwards. Dai Yu explained in detail and Su Zimo listened attentively. Even so, when Su Zimo really practiced, he could not help but suffer. Dai Yu stood at the side with a cold face. If there was anything wrong, she would kick him. In the blink of an eye, a day had passed. Su Zimo was famished. He slaughtered a bull excitedly and set up a metal pot to stew a pot of delicious beef. While waiting, Dai Yu picked up the bull tongue that Su Zimo threw aside and said, "Stab me with a knife." Huh. Su Zimo was a little stunned. He did not understand what Dai Yu was trying to do. Dai Yu said, "I'll teach you the 3rd move as well." "I can't teach you this move. You can only rely on yourself to experience the changes in that instant." Su Zimo knew that with Dai Yu's abilities, even if he stabbed her with all his might, he would not be able to hurt her. Su Zimo held the sharp knife tightly and stabbed at Dai Yu's shoulder. At the same time, he focused on Dai Yu's movements. Dai Yu's expression was indifferent. She raised the smooth and tender bull tongue in her hand and gently placed it on the incoming sharp knife. Bah! There was a crisp sound. Su Zimo was dumbfounded and stood rooted to the spot. The bull tongue was intact. However, Su Zimo's knife was only left with the handle. The blade was shattered and scattered all over the ground. Su Zimo was the one who killed the bull. He knew very well that the bull tongue was extremely ordinary and would not be able to defend against a sharp knife. Furthermore, Su Zimo had not sensed Dai Yu's strength just now. Otherwise, the handle of the knife would not have been in his hand, and it would have flown out long ago. The most ordinary bull tongue was able to shatter a sharp knife into pieces. If it had not been placed on the knife but on flesh and blood, wouldn't that mean that the flesh and blood would have been shredded into pieces? The 3rd move is called bull tongue saber. It sounds ordinary but it contains the essence of this move, Dai Yu said. You once asked me what level of skin tempering is considered a small success. Let me tell you now. When your palm is like a bull's tongue, it's considered a small success. Chapter 5. It was often said that cultivation knew no time. It was only after Su Zimo embarked on the path of cultivation that he truly felt that way. Unknowingly, Su Zimo had already spent 3 months in the cultivation field. His body had also undergone a complete transformation. Others might not be able to sense this change, but Su Zimo was the only one who knew best. During this period of time, he had already mastered plow heaven stride and moon-gazing bovine. Coupled with the breathing and expiration technique, Su Zimo's skin had become increasingly tough. Ordinary swords and sabers would not be able to pierce through it. Every movement of his was filled with ferocious strength. However, what troubled Su Zimo was that he still did not know how to execute bovine-tongued saber. In the cultivation field, Su Zimo took a deep breath. Holding his chest and straightening his back, he took a step forward with his left leg. It was the stance of plow heaven stride. Initially, Su Zimo stood at the same spot and looked like a weak scholar. However, the moment he took a step forward, his aura underwent a complete transformation. It was as though he wanted to trample the entire sky beneath his feet. At the same time, Su Zimo exerted strength from his waist and abdomen. His body leaned forward and he punched forward with both fists. As he exhaled, a sound similar to a moo could be heard. It was deep and powerful, shocking the mind. Plow heaven stride and moon-gazing bovine were executed smoothly. Coupled with the breathing and expiration technique, it was even more powerful. Dayu, who was sitting on the green rock, saw this scene and nodded to herself. After moon-gazing bovine, Su Zimo did not stop. He opened his fist and threw it forward. The third style, bovine-tongued saber. Piak. A crisp sound was heard from the palm in the air. Su Zimo sighed softly and shook his head. It was still not right. This palm looked intimidating, but it did not execute the transformation of bovine-tongued saber. Dayu retracted her gaze. It was already beyond her expectations that Su Zimo could reach such a level in 3 months. Bovine-tongued saber was considered the most difficult, and also the most powerful style among the 3 styles of the bovine. One would definitely not be able to comprehend the essence of it through hard work. This required a bit of comprehension. Otherwise, not to mention 3 months, even if it took 3 years or even 30 years, it would still be impossible to master this move. After repeated failures, Su Zimo felt somewhat vexed. Thus, he walked out of the training grounds and went to the courtyard to relax, looking around. Inadvertently, Su Zimo's gaze fell on the yellow ox that was chewing on the tender grass not far away. The yellow ox was the most common ox in the market. It was used by farmers to plow the fields. At this moment, it chewed the leaves in its mouth and swallowed them into its stomach. It lowered its head and stuck out its tongue, sweeping a clump of tender grass. With a roll and a pull, the clump of tender grass was already in its mouth. Su Zimo's eyes gradually brightened as an idea flashed through his mind. These tender grasses were the most common type of grass. The blades of grass were slender and long, and the edges were serrated. When Su Zimo was young, he was not careful and was scratched by these blades of grass. The ox's tongue was so smooth and tender, but it was not afraid of the grass. The palm was like the ox's tongue, and the blade was like the grass. This was the essence of the ox's tongue-rolling blade. Su Zimo was overjoyed. The scene of the yellow ox eating grass kept appearing in his mind. He experienced the changes in that instant, repeatedly tried to figure it out, and subconsciously practiced it. Have you heard? The Su family has encountered an unforeseen event. It's said that the Su family's restaurant has been smashed to pieces. I'm afraid they can't continue to operate. It seems that someone has died. So serious. A burst of discussion came from outside the mansion, which awakened Su Zimo from his cultivation. Su Zimo woke up from his cultivation. His heart sank. He pushed the door open and ran straight to the Su family's residence. Along the way, Su Zimo listened to the discussions around him and roughly understood the cause and effect of this unforeseen event. The cause was that a few people were picking a quarrel and causing trouble in the Su family's restaurant. After a round of smashing, Uncle Zheng rushed over with his men. Unexpectedly, these people were masters of the perfected acquired realm. They were well prepared and injured Uncle Zheng and his men. Damn it, I can't take this lying down. Su Zimo had just arrived when he heard a thunderous scolding. This person was Yuchi Hua, one of the guards of the Su family. He had a fiery temper. The few people in the house were the most trusted people of the Su family. Su Zimo lost his parents when he was 2 years old. Uncle Zheng and the rest were the earliest batch of people in the Su family and doted on him very much. In the beginning, it was these dozens of people who helped his elder brother gain a foothold in Pingyang town. The two generations had a deep relationship. A strong smell of medicine, mixed with a faint smell of blood, greeted him. Second young master is here. Everyone in the Su family did not neglect Su Zimo at all, even if he had lost his scholarly honors. Su Zimo nodded and looked at an old man lying on the bed. Second young master. The old man's hair and beard were all white and his face was yellowish. He seemed to have one foot in the grave. When he saw Su Zimo, he still smiled and there was a trace of doting in his eyes. Uncle Zheng was the housekeeper of the Su family. Although he did not know any martial arts, everyone in the Su family, including Su Hong, was respectful to him. Uncle Zheng was thin and old. Now that he was seriously injured, it was unknown if he could survive. Uncle Zheng, who is the other party? Su Zimo was furious but his expression was calm. He came to the bedside and asked softly, "Who else can it be?" "It must be the 3 grandsons of the Zhao, Li and Yang families." Yu Qihua scolded. "This matter is not so simple." The person who spoke was in his 40s. He looked calm and steady. He was the leader of the Su family's guards, Lu Yu. "Uncle Lu, what do you mean?" Su Zimo asked. Lu Yu looked at Su Zimo and wanted to say something but stopped. How could Yu Qihua hold himself back? He shouted, "Lu Yu, why are you being so wishy-washy? Look at the situation now. Mr. Zheng was injured by them and old Guan died a tragic death. If not for the fact that your subordinates were smart and fought their way out, Mr. Zheng would not be alive now. That group of people wanted to kill him. Uncle Guan is dead?" Su Zimo felt a pain in his heart. When he was young, Su Zimo often rode on Uncle Guan's neck and grabbed his hair. But no matter how Su Zimo messed around, Uncle Guan was never angry. He would only play with him with a smile. Su Zimo gritted his teeth. The government doesn't care about such matters. The government only cares about the commoners. They can't wait to avoid the conflict between these few families. Moreover, this is a matter of the pugilistic world. Lu Yu shook his head and said. Su Zimo asked in a low voice, "Uncle Lu, what exactly happened?" Lu Yu sighed softly. "My guards followed those people and saw them enter the Shen family. The Shen family is a bunch of ungrateful bastards." Yu Qihua smashed the table beside him with a punch and panted heavily. All these years, due to the relationship between Su Zimo and Shen Mengqi, the Su family had helped the Shen family a lot. But now that Shen Mengqi had joined the immortal sect and sword, the Shen family had turned their attention to the Su family. Lu Yu continued, "I've investigated. The Shen family is preparing to build a restaurant. Our Su family's restaurant is in the way." Su Zimo was expressionless as he listened to Lu Yu's analysis quietly. Cough cough. Uncle Zheng coughed a few times and panted slightly. Although the Shen family is taking the lead in this matter, the other 3 families might be adding fuel to the fire. This matter ends here. We'll talk about it when young master returns. Are we just going to tolerate it? Yu Qihua clenched his teeth. Lu Yu sighed. Let's tolerate it first. The Shen family has risen too quickly. They might already have Khanate experts. If we go to them rashly, we might die there. When will young master return? I don't know. I reckon he'll be back soon. Su Zimo suddenly said, "Uncle Zheng, recuperate well. I'll go out to take a breather." With that, Su Zimo turned around and left. 3 months ago, Su Zimo's scholarly achievements were stripped and Shen Mengqi left. Coupled with Zhui Feng's death, he was truly filled with resentment. Otherwise, he would not have nearly lost control that night and stabbed that ruffian to death. During this period of time, Su Zimo had been cultivating bitterly under Dai Yu's guidance. But in reality, he had not vented his resentment. Now that the Su family had met with such an unforeseen event, Uncle Zheng was seriously injured and Uncle Guan died tragically, Su Zimo was completely enraged. When Su Zimo walked out of the Su family's residence, there were only 2 words in his mind: they had gone too far. Su Zimo had a rough understanding of the difference between the postnatal and Khanate realms in the pugilistic world. The postnatal and Khanate realms were divided into the early stage, mid-stage, late stage and perfected realms. His elder brother, Su Hong, was an early-stage Khanate expert. Su Zimo was not sure what level of expert he could go against now. In Su Zimo's opinion, there was no way that 3 months of cultivation could match up to dozens of years of hard work from others. But Su Zimo still wanted to go to the Shun family to seek justice. After all, he had studied for more than 10 years, and felt that everything was more important than the word reason. The Shun family had to give him an explanation. Not long later, Su Zimo arrived at the Shun family's residence. In just 3 months, the Shun family had undergone tremendous changes. It had developed from an ordinary family to the current Shun family's residence. 2 majestic stone lions stood on both sides of the vermilion door. If not for the fact that Su Zimo remembered the location, he would not have believed that this was Shan Mengqi's home. Su Zimo walked up the stairs. Without knocking on the door, he exerted strength in his arms and pushed the door open. At this moment, there were quite a number of people gathered in the Shun family's courtyard. They were drinking to their heart's content and chatting merrily. With Su Zimo's sudden intrusion, the commotion in the courtyard gradually dissipated. These people stopped what they were doing and stared at Su Zimo with an unfriendly expression. These people exuded a wild aura and looked ferocious. Their weapons gleamed coldly at the side. Someone with sharp eyes recognized Su Zimo and said sarcastically, "Io, isn't this the second young Master Su from the country of Dachi? What brings you to the Shun family's residence?" "Haha, brother, you don't know. Second young Master Su has been stripped of his scholarly achievements and is now a free man." These wild people from the pugilistic world looked sarcastic and stared at Su Zimo maliciously. They even deliberately knocked their weapons against each other. Sparks flew and there was an ear-piercing sound of metal clashing. If it were an ordinary scholar, he would have been so scared that his legs would have turned to jelly when faced with such a scene. However, Su Zimo's expression did not change. Instead, he walked to the middle of the courtyard. Back then, Su Zimo had not even started cultivating and he dared to confront perfected Song Lang because of the injustice in his heart. These wild people from the pugilistic world in front of him were worlds apart from perfected Jin Dan. How could they suppress him? Su Zimo's face was as calm as water. His eyes swept across the courtyard and he said calmly, "I want to see Shun Nan." Shun Nan was Shun Mengqi's brother. "Haha, second young Master Su, you came uninvited. Please excuse me for not going out to welcome you." His voice was heard before he saw the person. Su Zimo's gaze shifted. In the depths of the long corridor of the courtyard, a man in a white robe was walking slowly towards him. He was full of smiles but did not hide the mockery in his eyes. Chapter 6. Shun Nan was wearing a white brocade robe with a jade pendant at his waist. He looked like a rich young master. However, everyone in Pingyang Town knew about his background. Before this, Shun Nan was the shopkeeper of the Su family restaurant. This was on account of Su Zimo. Shun Nan picked up a cup of wine from the side and walked to Su Zimo. He passed the cup to him and said with a fake smile, "Second young Master Su, you have graced us with your presence. I have to offer you a toast. Please." Whose idea was it for today's matter? Su Zimo ignored him and asked calmly. The smile on Shun Nan's face did not fade. He tilted his head and pretended not to know. "Second young Master Su, what are you talking about? I don't understand. Shun Nan, I want an explanation. Who is the murderer?" Su Zimo stared into Shun Nan's eyes. His tone was still very calm. Shun Nan raised his eyebrows and stopped smiling. He raised his head and drank the wine in his cup. He said faintly, "It seems that second young Master Su does not want to accept a toast. Instead, you want to accept a forfeit." With that, Shun Nan threw the wine cup in his hand on the ground. It shattered into pieces with a loud bang. Hearing this, the people in the courtyard stood up one after another. The sound of swords being unsheathed could be heard. All of them became murderous and ferocious. "Damn it, I can't stand this fellow for a long time. Does he really think that he is a young master? He is just a lowly commoner. How shameless. Imo Song was the one who did it today. I killed that Guan fellow personally." "Me too. It's a pity that the old man was not killed by me." Su Zimo glanced at the few people who were talking. He nodded and said, very good, very good. Shinnan sneered. Suzimo, don't ask for trouble. On account of my sister I will get lost. Before Shinnan could finish his words, he was interrupted by Suzimo's shout. The expressions of everyone in the courtyard became extremely strange. They seemed to be in disbelief. Shinnan's face was ferocious. He said coldly, "How dare you scold me?" Suzimo narrowed his eyes. The sharpness of this gaze startled Shinnan. Before he could react, he saw Suzimo make his move. Without any unnecessary movements, Suzimo stretched out his palm and slapped Shinnan's face. Pa! Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Shinnan was sent flying a few meters away by Suzimo's slap. Shinnan had also begun to practice Wu Dao in these 3 months. He had also made some small achievements and had reached the Hotian primary stage. But he hadn't expected that he would be sent flying by Suzimo's slap. That palm strike didn't look fast, but he couldn't react in time. However, in the eyes of the crowd of Jianghu people, this palm strike gave them a different feeling. To be able to slap someone a few meters away with just the strength of his palm was definitely not something an ordinary person could do. However, most of the people present on the scene were Hotian advanced stage experts. Mo Song and a few others were Hotian consummate stage experts. So they didn't put Suzimo in their eyes. Kill him. Shinnan's cheeks were already swollen, and there was blood at the corner of his mouth. He lay on the ground and pointed at Suzimo as he shouted. Without waiting for Shinnan's order, Mo Song and a few others had already charged at Suzimo. Swords and sabers were slashing at him from all directions, and the cold air was threatening. Although Suzimo had been cultivating for 3 months, he only knew 3 moves. He had never fought with anyone before. Faced with such a situation, Suzimo was a little flustered. He instinctively used Plow Heaven Stride and charged at Mo Song. Swoosh swoosh. Suzimo's 2 steps covered an astonishing distance of more than 10 feet. His speed was extremely fast and he actually dodged most of the attacks. Everyone only saw a blur in front of their eyes. A figure flashed past, and the swords and sabers missed. Oh no! The corner of Mo Song's eyes twitched violently, and his expression changed. Others could not feel it clearly, but Mo Song, who was at the front, was forcefully suppressed by a monstrous force after Suzimo took 2 steps. His heart trembled. At this moment, Suzimo was no longer a weak scholar. He was clearly a ferocious beast that devoured people. His heart trembled, and Mo Song's hand movements slowed down. With such a delay, Suzimo had already arrived in front of Mo Song. His arms extended from his abdomen, and his fists were clenched tightly. The joints of his index finger protruded, and he pushed and flicked forward. Suzimo was all too familiar with this set of movements. Even with his eyes closed, he could practice it flawlessly. And this time Suzimo attacked with anger, venting all the anger in his chest for the past 3 months. Poof! The entire place was silent. Mo Song had a strange expression. He lowered his head slowly, and saw that there were 2 bowl-sized bloody holes on his chest. 2 muscular arms were stuffed in them. In a split second, blood drained from Mo Song's face. His head fell to the side and he died on the spot. In the eyes of everyone, both parties had only exchanged 1 blow. Before Mo Song's saber landed on Suzimo's body, the latter's arms had already pierced through Mo Song's chest. Bloody fists protruded from Mo Song's back, and it was a shocking sight. Even though these ruffians of the pugilistic world were knowledgeable, they could not imagine that a human's fist could pierce through flesh and blood. A perfected postnatal expert was killed by a weak scholar just like that. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, who would have believed it? Murder. Suzimo was a little dazed. His mind was filled with Dai Yu's casual words. Most of the moves in the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness are killing techniques. Killing techniques meant killing once they were used. It was only at this moment that Suzimo truly understood the meaning of these 3 words. While Suzimo was still in a daze, someone raised his saber and chopped down on Suzimo's neck. Another person thrust his sword forward and viciously stabbed into Suzimo's back. Clang! Clang! There was no sound of a sharp weapon cutting into flesh. Instead, there was a sound similar to the collision of metal. The steel saber that chopped down on Suzimo's neck strangely bounced back. The sword that stabbed into his back also bent into a huge arc, and did not pierce in at all. Hiss! Everyone's expression changed drastically, and they gasped. If the sword could not pierce in, it could be because Suzimo was wearing some superior armor. The steel saber had clearly chopped down on flesh and blood, but strangely bounced back. There was really no explanation for that. Thwart Kung Fu? What kind of thwart Kung Fu could have such power? Although the saber and sword did not hurt Suzimo, they still made him stagger. The skin tempering skill could block the sharpness of the saber and sword, but it could not block the power contained in the saber and sword. At this moment, Suzimo felt a sharp pain in his back and neck. He gritted his teeth and endured it. Thief, you're courting death! Suzimo shouted loudly. Using the plow heaven stride, he dashed towards the person on the left. Boom! Boom! Suzimo's feet plowed two huge gullies on the extremely hard bluestone ground. Sand and stones flew in all directions. His momentum was terrifying. The person's expression changed drastically. He finally understood the fear and shock that Emo-song felt before he died. Suzimo's momentum was too strong. Just by taking a step forward, the ferocious aura on his body made him feel suffocated. Poof! It was still the bovine moon-gazing skill. Two bloody holes appeared on the chest of a master at the later stage of the acquired realm. He died on the spot. In the face of Suzimo, who was invulnerable, everyone felt helpless. In the blink of an eye, Suzimo had killed two people in a row. The blood in his body seemed to be boiling. The initial panic and nervousness had long disappeared. You're next! Suzimo's eyes were like torches. He turned his head and looked at the last person. Just now that person had said that he had injured Uncle Zheng. Now that he was targeted by Suzimo, he suddenly felt a chill down his spine and his hair stood on end. Everyone, let's attack together. No matter how strong the thwart Kung Fu is, there's a Mingmen and a limit. The person shouted loudly. Although the others in the courtyard were a little tempted, they were still worried. They were shocked by Suzimo's murderous aura and did not attack immediately. Ta! 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 Suzimo took 3 steps forward. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of the person. Without saying anything, he used the bovine moon-gazing skill again. The person had long realized that Suzimo only used this move. Although he was scared out of his wits by the plow heaven stride's momentum, he relied on his agility and fell to the ground first. He did not care about his dignity and used the lazy donkey rolling move. The bovine moon-gazing skill attacked the upper part of the waist. The person used this move to deal with it and just happened to avoid Suzimo's fists. Even so, the person could still smell the extremely tragic smell of blood. The last desire in his heart disappeared instantly. Run! This person is unbeatable. The bovine moon-gazing skill missed. Suzimo looked at his opponent who was rolling on the ground and was momentarily confused. This was the only move he knew. If the bovine moon-gazing skill could not kill him, Suzimo would be at his wits' end. At this moment, Suzimo had a flash of inspiration. He let out a long howl and chased after him with big strides. The lazy donkey rolling was a strange move. It could be used occasionally and it did have some effect. However, the speed of a person rolling on the ground could not be compared to the speed of his legs. Before the howl stopped, Suzimo had already caught up with the person. When the person heard Suzimo's howl, he knew that something was wrong and instinctively looked back. As far as the eye could see, everything was covered by sand and gravel. Immediately after, this person felt a huge force colliding with his chest. Bam! In the next moment the person hit the wall heavily. He paused for a while before sliding down slowly. His chest caved in deeply and he had already stopped breathing. Suzimo reacted at the last minute. With the help of the plow heaven stride's strength, he kicked the person. A killing move. The plow heaven stride was also a killing move. The various experts who were still clamoring in the courtyard were now as silent as cicadas in winter. There was fear in their eyes. All of them retreated, afraid that Suzimo would be the next to find them. It was no wonder that these people were terrified. It was because Suzimo's power was too shocking. From the time he attacked until now, it had only been a few minutes. There were already 2 perfected postnatal experts, and 1 late-stage postnatal expert lying dead on the spot. Suzimo sneered. He turned and walked toward Shan Nan, who was so frightened that his face turned pale. You, what do you want to do? Shen Nan's voice was trembling. He wanted to turn and run, but he realized that his legs were weak. He could only sit on the ground and slowly move backward. Whose idea was it for today's matter? Su Zimo looked down at Shen Nan from above as he asked word by word. No, it wasn't me. Who was it? Su Zimo's tongue was like thunder as he shouted. Shen Nan trembled and panted heavily. There was a flash of ruthlessness in his eyes. He gritted his teeth and said, "If you dare to hurt me, the Su family will definitely be annihilated." Huh? Su Zimo's face darkened. He squinted and said, "Are you threatening me?" The killing intent that Su Zimo had just suppressed surged in his heart again. At this moment, a sinister voice came from the inner courtyard of the Shun residence. "Junior, you are courting death. How dare you come here and behave atrociously?" Chapter 7. Before the voice died down, a ghostly figure sped towards them. Su Zimo looked carefully. It was a middle-aged man. His cheeks were dry and skinny. His gaze was fierce and sharp like an eagle's. He tapped the ground a few times and arrived in front of Su Zimo. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. This middle-aged man was much stronger than everyone in the courtyard, be it in terms of his movement or aura. A Khanate expert. Buzz. The middle-aged man's hand, which was originally hidden behind his back, suddenly stretched out. It was accompanied by the clear sound of a sword. A long sword with a chilling aura pierced towards Su Zimo's face. The tip of the sword trembled like a nimble poisonous snake, making a terrifying sound. Before the sword arrived, a gust of biting cold air rushed towards him. The skin on Su Zimo's face was slightly painful. Su Zimo realized that with the strength and toughness of his skin now, he would definitely not be able to block this sword. The power of a Khanate expert could already threaten his life. After all, Su Zimo was too inexperienced in facing enemies. He had lost the initiative just by being slightly distracted. At this moment, even if Su Zimo used the bovine moon-gazing technique to charge out, his head would also be pierced by the sword. Retreat. There was no time to think. Su Zimo used the plow heaven stride and retreated rapidly. Humph! The middle-aged man sneered. His movement was faster and faster. The long sword did not stop moving. It followed closely behind Su Zimo. The tip of the sword still covered Su Zimo's face. The situation became more dangerous. Su Zimo's eyes were filled with sword gleams. His eyes were in pain and tears were already flowing down. At this moment, there was a flash of cruelty in the middle-aged man's eyes. "Oh no, there's a wall behind me." Su Zimo's heart sank. Although the Shun family's courtyard was spacious, there was also a boundary. Both parties were extremely fast, one chasing the other. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo had already retreated to the wall. There was no way to retreat. Even if Su Zimo used brute force to break the wall, there would be a moment of delay. In just an instant, it was enough for the middle-aged man to cut down Su Zimo with his sword. "Stop!" A figure suddenly rushed in from the door with a steel saber in his hand. With a loud shout, he rushed toward the middle-aged man aggressively. It's Uncle Lu. Although Su Zimo could not divert his attention to look, he could guess the identity of the person just by listening to the voice. The middle-aged man glanced over with a mocking expression. Not to mention that Lu Yu was only a Hotian consummate. Even if a Xiantian master appeared now, he wouldn't be able to save Su Zimo. There was only a short distance between the sword and Su Zimo. It's too late. He's dead for sure. The middle-aged man shouted. His eyes shone with a cold light as he thrust his sword forward. When his life was hanging by a thread, Su Zimo's mind suddenly calmed down. There was no panic in his eyes, and he was abnormally calm. His senses also became much sharper than usual. Su Zimo knew very well that the only person who could save him at this moment was himself. Facing the sword that was so close to him, Su Zimo closed his eyes instead. The scene of the cattle grazing on grass in the cultivation field flashed across his mind. Subconsciously, Su Zimo stretched out his palm and placed it on the incoming sword. A roll, a shake, and a pull. The most powerful move of the three moves of the wild bull, bovine-tongued saber. Bam! A crisp sound like a sudden clap of thunder reverberated endlessly in the Shun residence courtyard. The next moment, everyone was stunned on the spot. Their eyes were filled with confusion, doubt and disbelief. The middle-aged man only had the hilt left of the sword in his hand. The body of the sword was completely shattered. The fragments scattered on the ground, shining with a strange light. The middle-aged man opened his mouth and his pupils constricted. He looked at Su Zimo, who was not far away, and did not continue to attack. Instead, he took a few steps back and was on guard. Su Zimo opened his eyes and panted slightly. He looked a little dazed. Did he survive? Just now, Su Zimo truly experienced the feeling of death. Until now, Su Zimo still felt that it was a little unreal. A breeze blew past. Unknowingly, Su Zimo's back was already wet. He broke out in a cold sweat. "Let's go." At this moment, Lu Yu's voice rang in Su Zimo's ears. Then someone tugged at his arm. Su Zimo subconsciously followed Lu Yu out of the Shun family's residence. Not to mention the people in the Shun family, even Su Zimo himself could not react in time. His mind was in a mess. He just lowered his head and followed Uncle Lu. Along the way, Lu Yu's gaze was fixed on Su Zimo. Before this, not long after Su Zimo left the Su family's residence, Uncle Zheng told him that the second young master looked strange. He was afraid that the second young master would go to the Shun family to seek justice. He instructed him to protect the second young master. When he rushed to the Shun family's residence, he saw the middle-aged man attacking Su Zimo. Lu Yu's eyesight was very good. He could tell at a glance that the man was a Khanate expert. He did not understand at all why a weak scholar like Su Zimo would provoke a Khanate expert. The situation was critical and he did not have time to think. He could only take action first to save Su Zimo. Subsequently, Lu Yu saw a scene that caused everyone to be inexplicably shocked. Lu Yu's gaze lingered on Su Zimo's palm. His mind was full of confusion. He thought to himself, could it be that the second young master is wearing a glove-like protective equipment? But even so, how much strength would it take to shatter a Khanate expert's sword into pieces? What puzzled Lu Yu the most was that Su Zimo did not show any signs of practicing martial arts. His body seemed to be thinner than before. Strange. Lu Yu's heart skipped a beat. He wanted to test Su Zimo. Hence, he released his palm and used his movement skill to increase his speed. Su Zimo lowered his head absent-mindedly. No one knew what he was thinking. He just followed behind Lu Yu subconsciously. Not long after, Lu Yu and Su Zimo returned to the Su family's residence. At this moment, Lu Yu's forehead was covered in sweat. His chest was heaving up and down. He could not hide the shock in his eyes. Along the way, he increased his speed 3 times in a row. In the end, he even reached his limit. However, Su Zimo was still following closely behind. The scariest thing was that Su Zimo looked normal and his breathing was stable. It was obvious that he still had energy left. When they arrived at the Su family's residence, Su Zimo gradually came back to his senses. In fact, the shock in Su Zimo's heart was no less than that of the others. Although Su Zimo vaguely felt that the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness was extraordinary, he did not expect it to be so powerful after just 3 months of cultivation. Su Zimo looked at his palm. It was intact. Done. Just now, at the brink of death, Su Zimo had mastered the bovine-tongued saber move. Su Zimo was overjoyed. After thinking for a while, he told Daiyu this news and showed off a little. Suddenly, Su Zimo felt something. He looked up and saw Lu Yu staring at him with a strange expression. "What's wrong, Uncle Lu?" Su Zimo asked. Lu Yu said in a low voice, "Nothing. Let's go in. You go back to your room to rest first. I'll look for you later." Su Zimo nodded. Lu Yu sent Su Zimo away and went straight to Uncle Zheng's room. He recounted what he saw at the Shun family's residence. Everyone in the room was shocked. If Lu Yu did not say it himself, no one would believe it. Is second young master a Khanate expert? Yu Chihua asked. Lu Yu shook his head and said, people who practice martial arts will have many changes in their bodies. For example, their temples will bulge, their knuckles will be thick, their hands will have calluses and their bodies will be strong. But second young master has none of these changes. Second young master has no calluses on his hands and his fingers are long and slender. He doesn't look like he has held a weapon before. Uncle Zheng said, second young master has been studying and has no chance to practice martial arts. Otherwise, how could we not know? Moreover, it takes more than 10 years of hard work to advance to a Khanate expert. This is only if he is gifted and has cultivated a good inner strength mental cultivation method. How old is second young master? Liu thought for a while and said, but on the way back I tried to test him. I can confirm that second young master's movement technique is extremely fast and is even faster than mine. Ah! This time everyone was shocked. As the leader of the Su family guards, although Liu was not good at movement techniques, he could be ranked in the top 10 in terms of speed. Uncle Zheng frowned and asked, has second young master cultivated any advanced Qinggong? In the pugilistic world, there was no lack of advanced Qinggong that was similar to 8 steps to catch a toad. After cultivating it, one's body would be as light as a swallow and could indeed increase one's speed. It doesn't look like it. Liu shook his head and said, second young master is just running normally. He is down to earth and there is nothing advanced about it. Everyone was puzzled. Liu said in a low voice, if I am not wrong, that middle-aged man should be Tang Mingjun, who is known as the soul-snatching sword. He is a beginner Khanate expert. This doesn't make sense. Why would an Khanate expert attack second young master? Isn't he afraid of humiliating himself? Uncle Zheng frowned slightly. What Uncle Zheng meant was that if he wanted to kill second young master, any martial artist could do it. Why would an Khanate expert attack? In fact, Liu was slightly late and did not see the scene where Su Zimo killed 3 people consecutively. When he arrived, Su Zimo was in a life-and-death situation. He did not have time to look around and escaped with Su Zimo from the Shun family's residence. Everyone present did not expect that the soul-snatching sword, Tang Mingjun, did not want to attack. He was forced to do so. Oh no! At this moment, a Su family guard pushed the door open and said in a panic, there are many people outside the door. They are aggressive and they want second young master to pay with his life. Don't panic. Who are they? Liu asked in a low voice. The Zhao and Li families and Shan Nan from the Shun family also brought many people. The Su family guard swallowed his saliva and said while panting, pay with his life. Uncle Zheng murmured and was deep in thought. According to what Liu said, Su Zimo did not kill anyone in the Shun family's residence. How could he pay with his life? Damn it! This is obviously a provocation. How could second young master kill anyone? I will go out and meet them. Yuchihua was angry. He stood up and wanted to rush out. Wait! Uncle Zheng coughed and said in a low voice, carry me out. Mr. Zheng, don't move. You might worsen your injury, Liu advised immediately. Uncle Zheng was firm and shook his head. They are not friendly. Since young master is not around, I have to go out and take a look. Everyone from the Su family came to the door and looked out. Their hearts sank. There were at least a few hundred people outside the door. They were densely packed and all of them looked unfriendly. Most of them were postnatal experts and there were 3 beginner Khanate experts. Tang Mingjun was one of them. With the current strength of the Su family, if they did not handle it well, they might be killed by this force. Chapter 8. The burly man behind young Master Zhao might be a mid-stage Khanate. Everyone don't attack. Bear with it as much as you can until young master returns, Uncle Zheng said softly. Everyone in the Su residence was shocked. Middle-stage Khanate. Liu also said softly, this person looks unfamiliar. I'm afraid he's not from Pingyang town. Everyone be careful. Where is Su Zimo? Ask him to come out. Shun Nan held his swollen face and shouted fiercely. Liu stepped forward and cupped his fists. He said in a low voice, everyone, why are you looking for my second young master? The leader, a young man in a brocade robe and holding a folding fan, laughed softly. A life for a life. Second young master Su has killed people. Of course he has to pay for it. The person who spoke was the young master of the Zhao family. His name was Zhao Yu and he was at the perfected postnatal realm. He was very famous in Pingyang town. Standing beside him was the young master of the Li family, Li Yuan Mao. *T. Yuchihua pointed at Zhao Yu and scolded. If anyone has to pay for it, you should pay for my brother Guan's life first. Uncle Zheng coughed violently and panted. You said that my second young master killed 3 people. What evidence do you have? Ha ha. Shun Nan laughed sinisterly. Old man, Everyone in the Shun residence saw Su Zimo killing people with their own eyes. As he spoke, people from the Shun residence carried the corpses of Mo Song and the rest. Although the three of them were already dead, their eyes were still open. Their eyes were filled with terror. It was obvious that they had suffered a great impact before they died. Lu Yu and the rest were shocked to see the state of the three people's deaths. It was too ruthless. Two of them had their chests pierced by sharp weapons that were as thick as an arm. The other person's chest caved in and his bones were all shattered. Uncle Zheng looked around and his expression did not change. He shook his head and said, "If you want to condemn someone, you can always accuse him. Everyone in Pingyang Town knows that my second young master is a scholar. How can he kill these three postnatal experts?" "Cut the crap." Zhao Yu opened his paper fan and said coldly, "If the Su family doesn't hand them over, all of you will die today. I'm the one who killed them." At this moment, a voice sounded from outside the crowd. Everyone looked towards the source of the voice and saw a blue-robed scholar walking over with large strides. It was Su Zimo. Su Zimo stood in front of the people from the Su residence. Looking at the hundreds of people in front of him, he wasn't afraid at all. He said loudly, "I killed him. If anything happens, I'll take responsibility for it." "Second young master, don't be rash," Yuchihua hurriedly said. Lu Yu also whispered, "Second young master. They came with ill intentions and are plotting something. Finding you is just an excuse. Don't fall for it." Li Yuanmao laughed strangely and said, "Since second young master Su has already admitted it, this matter couldn't be simpler. Arrest him. Protect second young master." Uncle Zheng's tone was firm. He said slowly, "Fight to the death." Clang! They unsheathed their swords and sabers one after another. Lu Yu and the others surrounded Su Zimo and Uncle Zheng in the middle. Both sides were ready to fight at any moment. Zhao Yu kept his folding fan and said coldly, "Arrest Su Zimo. Kill anyone who dares to stop us." Su Zimo clenched his fists. He wanted to use the plow heaven stride to dash into the crowd and find the few Khanate experts. To be fair, an early-stage Khanate expert already had the power to threaten him. Moreover, there was a mid-stage Khanate expert on the other side. However, at this moment he couldn't care less. All of a sudden, there was the sound of hurried horse hooves. The horse was moving at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, it was already near them. "Whoever dares to touch my younger brother, I, Su Hong, will kill him." The crowd dispersed. A man with a spear and a murderous aura could be seen galloping towards them. He only tightened the reins when he reached the entrance of the Su residence. The man was riding on a tall horse. He held a cold iron spear in his hand. He exuded a sharp and murderous aura. His eyes were like torches and one couldn't look at him directly. There was a frightening scar on his face. It extended from his glabella to his earlobe. Although the scar had already formed a scar, the tender red skin and flesh at the edge of the scar turned outwards. It looked extremely horrifying and added to his ferocity. It was the eldest young master of the Su family, Su Hong. Everyone in the Su family was shocked. They could not hide the joy in their eyes. "Zhao Yu, Li Yuanmao, the two of you have grown up? How dare you create trouble for the Su family, huh?" Su Hong did not get down from his horse. He looked down at the two of them and spoke in a cold voice. "Haha, so it's the eldest young master of the Su family. You've come at the right time. I've been waiting for a long time." Zhao Yu seemed to be prepared as he spoke with a smile. A burly man dressed in martial arts clothes appeared behind Zhao Yu. There was a thick saber hanging on his back. His eyes were cold as he said loudly, "I heard that the eldest young master of the Su family was already an early-stage Khanate expert at the age of 30. You're a dragon among men. It's rare that I have the chance to meet you today. I'm not interested in the name of a dead person." Before the man could finish his words, Su Hong interrupted him. "Giddy up." Su Hong shouted softly. The horse under him had already charged forward. In the blink of an eye, he was already in front of the burly man in martial arts clothes. He thrust his spear forward. "You're courting death." The burly man's expression did not change. He pulled out his thick saber and released his Khanate aura. He leaped up, raised his arms high above his head and slashed at Su Hong who was coming at him. "He's indeed a mid-stage Khanate," Lu Yu nodded. Upon hearing this, Su Zimo felt a little nervous. It was obvious that the Zhao family came prepared this time. They even calculated that Su Hong might rush back. That was why they invited a mid-stage Khanate expert to deal with Su Hong. Su Zimo swept his gaze across and realized that Lu Yu, Uncle Zheng and the rest did not seem nervous. What did this mean? Before he finished his thought, Su Hong and the burly man in martial arts clothes had already exchanged blows. Clang! The burly man's thick saber landed heavily on the spring drain spear, causing sparks to fly. The strength of the saber was so strong that it even forced Su Hong's horse to stop. Ha! Su Hong laughed loudly. The spring drain spear shook in his hands. It buzzed and vibrated, releasing a huge force that bounced off the thick saber. The burly man's expression changed drastically. Poof! Blood splattered everywhere. The burly man in martial arts clothes was sent flying by Su Hong's spear. He landed on the long street and his blood quickly dyed the ground red. You hid your strength. You're a Khanate. Before the burly man could finish his sentence, blood gushed out of his mouth. It was obvious that he would not survive. Everyone was shocked. No one expected that a mid-stage Khanate expert would be killed by Su Hong's spear in just one round. The most terrifying thing was what the burly man in martial arts clothes said before he died. Although he did not finish his sentence, everyone present could guess it. Late-stage Khanate. All these years, everyone in Pingyang town had underestimated Su Hong's ability. Let's go. The Khanate experts from the Zhao, Li and Shen families reacted quickly. They protected the three young masters and fled. Hundreds of pugilistic experts were frightened by one person's aura and fled in a panic. They did not dare to stay here for a moment. Su Hong sneered and did not chase after them. He got down from his horse and nodded at Su Zimo. Let's go back. In the inner courtyard of the Su family's residence, Su Hong sat in the middle and listened to Lu Yu's report on what had happened in Pingyang town in the past few months. He nodded from time to time. Su Zimo sat by the side and lowered his eyes. He did not say a word. Before this, his elder brother had never allowed him to enter the inner courtyard and had never participated in such meetings. After Lu Yu finished speaking, Su Hong's gaze landed on Su Zimo. He asked in a low voice, "Did you really kill the three postnatal experts from the Shen family?" Yes. Su Zimo hesitated for a moment before replying. Boom! Su Hong was still sitting on the chair, but he suddenly stood up. He stomped on the ground and there was a loud bang. He was already in front of Su Zimo and punched him. This change of events happened so quickly that even the people in the inner courtyard could not react in time, let alone Su Zimo. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He could not react in time and instinctively stretched out his palm and placed it on Su Hong's fist. A curl and a shake. He was about to use the bovine-tongued saber. In an instant, Su Zimo recalled the scene of him crushing the long sword of the Khanate expert in the courtyard of the Shen family. The bovine-tongued saber was only halfway through its transformation when Su Zimo hurriedly stopped. Bang! The fist and the palm collided and there was a loud bang. The chair that Su Zimo was sitting on broke into pieces. Under the impact of this force, Su Zimo lost his center of gravity and was about to fall on the ground. He instinctively released the force of the plow heaven stride. Su Zimo's body sank and he was almost lying flat on the ground. However, his feet did not move at all. They were deeply embedded in the ground. Su Zimo exerted force from his waist, abdomen and legs at the same time and straightened his body. This move was truly formidable, and it instantly caused the hearts of everyone in the inner court to surge with shock. Su Hong's eyes lit up. He nodded and laughed. Good kill. Su Zimo knew that his elder brother's action just now was to test him. At the moment when the fist and the palm collided, he obviously felt that his elder brother was trying to retract his force. Of course, Su Zimo did not use all his strength and stopped at the last moment. After witnessing the power of the bovine-tongued saber, Su Zimo did not dare to use it on his elder brother. Zimo, go back and rest. Losing scholarly honors is nothing to you. There are many good ladies in the world. Don't take it to heart. Xiaoning will be back from Songlang City soon. Spend more time with her when you are free. Su Xiaoning was Su Zimo's younger sister. She was 2 years younger than him. She was sent to Songlang City to study by Su Hong a few years ago. Su Zimo smiled and agreed. He turned and left. Su Hong looked at Su Zimo's back view. He had a complicated expression and did not speak for a long time. "Young master." Lu Yu called softly. Su Hong came back to his senses and said in a low voice, Zimo should not have cultivated any internal skills. Just now, he relied purely on his physical strength. "I have heard that some people are born with great strength. I think second young master is such a person." Lu Yu was delighted. Su Hong smiled and said, "It is not just great strength. Just now, when I fought with Zimo, my arm actually felt pain. I guess this lad still held back." Yu Qihua said, "Since second young master is so capable, why don't we tell him about the Su family's background and our plan?" "No." Su Hong shook his head decisively. "I did not allow Zimo to practice martial arts previously because I did not want him to be involved. I do not intend to live, but nothing must happen to Zimo and Xiaoning. Let's not talk about this anymore." Uncle Zheng sighed softly. "I watched second young master grow up. Given his intelligence, I am afraid he would have discovered the problem long ago. As long as we don't say anything, he will not know." Chapter 9. The Su family came to Pingyang Town 15 years ago. At that time there were only Uncle Zheng, Lu Yu and a few others. Su Hong was 15 years old. Su Zimo was 2 years old and Su Xiaoning had just been born. That year their parents died. According to the Su family, they encountered a beast tide when they passed by Conglang mountain range. Many people died, including their parents. All these years, Su Zimo had always been suspicious of this statement. Su Zimo could feel that be it his elder brother or the Su family, they were intentionally hiding many things from him and his sister, not just the cause of their parents' death. Back then, his elder brother gave him the mansion and name so that he could study in peace. However, Su Zimo knew at that time that his elder brother was just trying to send him away. Su Zimo studied hard and obtained scholarly honors so that he could help his elder brother one day. It was a pity. After returning to the mansion, Su Zimo gradually thought things through. Since his elder brother was unwilling to tell him, he did not have to force it. As long as he was strong enough, he would be able to survive no matter how big the crisis was. Su Zimo stepped into the cultivation field. Dai Yu was sitting on the green stone lazily. She looked straight ahead as if she did not see Su Zimo enter. "I have mastered the bovine tongue saber stance," Su Zimo said. Dai Yu replied with a hum in a neutral manner. Su Zimo knew that Dai Yu's reply was already a great compliment. "Go in and cultivate." Dai Yu pointed to the wooden barrel not far away. The wooden barrel had been placed in the cultivation field for some time, and it had always been empty. Su Zimo did not know what it was used for. But now the wooden barrel was filled with a black sticky liquid that gave off a strong medicinal fragrance. "So it is for me to cultivate." Su Zimo did not think much and jumped in directly. Thus, the moment he jumped into the wooden barrel, Su Zimo gasped and his expression changed. Cold. It was too cold. In just a few breaths, Su Zimo actually felt that his hands and feet were frozen. His hair and beard were covered with a layer of frost. His face was ashen, his lips were purple, and his body was trembling uncontrollably. What is this?" Su Zimo asked in a trembling voice. Dai Yu said faintly, "Come out if you can't take it anymore." Su Zimo really couldn't take it anymore. He even felt that if he continued to soak in the barrel, he might freeze to death. Su Zimo had just stood up and was about to jump out when he saw the mockery in Dai Yu's eyes. Enraged, he gritted his teeth and sat back down. In just a few dozen breaths of time, a bone-piercing chill filled Su Zimo's consciousness. Dai Yu's words flashed across Su Zimo's mind. "If you want to cultivate this technique, you will experience unimaginable dangers. You can lose your life at any time. Don't count on me to save you." Su Zimo realized that even if he froze to death here, Dai Yu wouldn't save him. Su Zimo closed his eyes and tried his best to ignore the coldness in his body. He started to circulate the skin-tempering breathing technique and started to breathe. Suddenly, a few lines of mysterious and lengthy sutra appeared in Su Zimo's mind. Dai Yu's voice sounded, "There is only one sutra in the body tempering manual. Seeing that you have no foundation, I split it into 2 parts, skin tempering and flesh tempering. Just now is the flesh tempering sutra." From today onwards you have to combine them and cultivate together. The flesh-tempering breathing technique is taken from the stone bear demon king. Bears have thick flesh and are slow in nature. They have a dignified appearance and have the strength of a vertical neck, the strength of a horizontal arm, the might of a cave and the ferocity of a tiger. When you combine the two breathing techniques, it will be the body tempering sutra. As Dayu spoke, she guided Su Zimo on the breathing technique. Gradually, Su Zimo got the hang of it and his breathing became longer and slower. With every breath, the essence of the medicinal liquid in the wooden tub flowed into his body through his pores, cleansing his skin and nourishing his flesh. This cultivation method was much more direct and effective than devouring flesh and refining it. Su Zimo could feel his flesh filling up and his skin becoming tougher. Even his body seemed to have grown stronger. If Su Zimo opened his eyes at this moment, he would be greeted with an incomparably shocking scene. Within the wooden tub, the pitch-black sticky medicinal liquid had already formed a gigantic whirlpool. Su Zimo was seated in the middle of the whirlpool. Beside Su Zimo, a bull demon beast and a bear demon beast appeared vaguely. Although they were blurry, their demonic eyes were frighteningly bright and shone with a cold glint. They exuded a ferocious aura that could shock the entire world. As time passed, the coldness in his body gradually dissipated. Endless essence washed his muscles and skin continuously as Su Zimo's cultivation realm rose rapidly. In the blink of an eye, a night had passed. Su Zimo opened his eyes and was shocked to discover that the medicinal liquid in the wooden tub had turned transparent and clear like water. Dayu leaped down from the green rock and said, "I'll teach you 3 more moves. The first style, earth-rupturing palm. The angle of this palm can be changed as you wish. You just have to remember the technique of exerting strength and understand the concept of earth rupturing." As she said that, Dayu raised her hand slightly. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he suddenly closed his eyes. A strange feeling surfaced in his mind. Su Zimo felt as though he was not facing Dayu, but a menacing bear demon that was raising its gigantic paw and slamming it down. Even though he knew that it was an illusion, Su Zimo's heart still retreated instinctively under the pressure of that aura. Splash! Su Zimo forgot that he was still in the wooden tub and fell to the ground wretchedly, spilling the water all over the ground. The second style, mountain pressing. This style requires the entire body to exert strength. As long as you press against it, the opponent will die without any time to react. Dayu rubbed her feet and pressed her entire body forward as her body trembled. Su Zimo's pupils constricted. The air in front of Dayu solidified after the mountain pressing and dissipated as though it was solid. The force of that press was so fast that even the air could not dodge it. The third style, flesh petrification. After pausing for a moment, Dayu said, "This style is a defensive technique from the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and can be considered as a mental cultivation technique. After mastering it, one's flesh can turn into an indestructible rock instantly, minimizing the damage from the impact." Su Zimo began to cultivate the 3 stances of the rock bear while Dayu stood at the side with a cold expression. Whenever there was anything wrong, she would give him pointers. Each time Dayu gave him pointers, Su Zimo suffered immensely. After a day, there was no progress in the 3 stances of the rock bear, and Su Zimo was already covered in injuries. His body was covered in bruises and he was drenched in sweat as he laid on the grass weakly, panting heavily. Of course, Su Zimo knew that without such harsh stimulation, the time he would need to spend to master the 3 stances of the rock bear would be several times longer. At night, Dayu prepared another tub of medicinal liquid for Su Zimo to cultivate in. Miraculously, no matter how badly Su Zimo was injured during the day, he would be full of energy after cultivating in the tub for a night without any injuries on his body. For the next 3 months, Su Zimo slaughtered cows and ate meat during the day to cultivate the 3 stances of the rock bear. At night, he would enter the tub and soak in the medicinal liquid to stimulate his breathing. Su Zimo gritted his teeth and persevered through the arduous cultivation day and night. Under such a cruel cultivation environment, Su Zimo's understanding of the body tempering sutra became deeper and deeper. He had also mastered the earth-splitting palm and mountain leaning. Only the petrification of flesh and blood had little effect. Su Zimo's skin gradually became smooth and delicate from the initial rough state when he cultivated the 3 stances of the wild bull. This was a process of returning to one's natural state. It looked as white as jade, but it was tougher than before. Su Zimo's body became stronger and his flesh and blood became more substantial. He grew a lot taller. At the age of 17, he was already more than 7 feet tall and was about the same height as Dai Yu. 3 months ago, Su Zimo tested his skills at the Shun residence and was slashed by a sword. Although he did not suffer any external injuries, the power of the sword still damaged his muscles and he was in pain for a long time. Now, Su Zimo reckoned that if he were to be stabbed by a perfected postnatal expert again, it would not hurt at all. Under the Body Tempering Sutra, this body was no longer weaker than ordinary swords after half a year of training. Of course, the changes brought about by cultivating the Body Tempering Sutra were not limited to this. The increase in strength and speed and the sharpness in his eyes made Su Zimo undergo a complete transformation. This morning, Su Zimo walked out of the cultivation field. He changed into a green robe and tidied himself up before heading to the Su residence. Today was the day that Su Xiaoning should be back. Be it Su Zimo, Su Hong or the rest of the Su family, they all loved and cared for this sister of theirs. They were afraid that she would suffer any grievances. Not long after, Su Zimo arrived at the Su residence. Second young master is back. The people of the Su residence were delighted and greeted him warmly. Su Zimo smiled and nodded. After 3 months of recuperation, Uncle Zheng's injuries were no longer serious. However, he looked much older. Eldest brother is not around again? Su Zimo asked casually. Uncle Zheng smiled and said, business has been busy recently. Eldest young master has to look after things outside. He can't make it back today. Su Zimo and Uncle Zheng chatted in the hall while waiting for Su Xiaoning to return. 2 hours, 4 hours, noon had passed. The distance between Songlang City and Pingyang Town was not far. It would take at most 2 hours on foot. However, Su Xiaoning had not returned yet. Su Zimo's face darkened. There was a cold glint in the depths of his eyes. Uncle Zheng frowned and thought for a while. He raised his voice and said, Lu Yu, I'm here. Uncle Zheng said in a low voice, quickly bring some men to Songlang City and see if Miss has set off. If there is any news, report back immediately. No need. Su Zimo waved his hands. He knew his sister best. Su Xiaoning had been extremely obedient since she was young. She would never do something that would make her family worry. Now that Su Xiaoning had not returned to Pingyang Town, there was only one explanation. She had met with an accident. Su Zimo's expression was cold as he stood up slowly. Uncle Zheng and Lu Yu instantly felt a suffocating pressure from that one action. Both of them had been through the baptism of the battlefield and countless life and death experiences. Even if they were to face immortals and an iron-blooded army, they could remain calm. But now, in front of Su Zimo, both of them felt a sense of trepidation. Second young master has really changed. Uncle Zheng and Lu Yu exchanged glances. The same thought flashed through their minds at the same time. Report, Shun Nan of the Shun family is outside and requests to see you, a guard of the Su residence shouted. Uncle Zheng took a deep breath and said, let him in. Haha. How have you been, everyone? Not long after, Shun Nan, who was dressed in white, walked over and said with a smile. Su Zimo did not say a word. He narrowed his eyes and stared at Shun Nan. Shun Nan's heart skipped a beat. For some reason, Shun Nan felt as if he was being targeted by a ferocious tiger or a hungry wolf. He would be torn into pieces in the blink of an eye. I'm only here to pass on a message. The Zhao and Li families have organized a banquet and would like to invite the 2 young masters of the Su family, Shun Nan said hurriedly, feeling guilty. Su Zimo came to Shun Nan's side and said calmly, elder brother is not around. I'll go with you. Second young master, there's nothing good about the banquet. Don't go. Lu Yu walked forward quickly and whispered in Su Zimo's ear. Su Zimo's gaze turned sideways. Lu Yu lowered his head and gritted his teeth. Second young master, I'll go with you. Su Xiaoning was missing and the Zhao family suddenly invited Su Hong and Su Zimo to the banquet. This was obviously a trap and they would definitely die. However, he could not watch as the second young master went into danger alone. Lu Yu, young master Zhao, has said that he will only invite the 2 young masters of the Su family. No one else is allowed to follow. Otherwise, Shun Nan did not finish his sentence, but the threat was obvious. Lead the way, Su Zimo said calmly. Shen Nan glared at Uncle Zheng and Lu Yu provocatively. He sneered and swaggered out of the Shun residence. Mr. Zheng, what should we do? Should I bring some men in charge over? We can't let anything happen to the second young master. Lu Yu looked anxious. No. Uncle Zheng shook his head and frowned. The other party is obviously prepared. The Zhao family is no different from a tiger's den now. Given the current strength of the Su family, we don't have the ability to go against them. After pausing for a while, Uncle Zheng said in a low voice, "Get the black armored cavalry nearest to here. The faster the better." Then, can we make it in time? Lu Yu asked. I don't know. Uncle Zheng sighed softly. We can only hope that the second young master and young mistress can hold on for a while longer. This is the only way. Chapter 10. Su Zimo had just stepped into the Zhao family's courtyard when the door behind him closed slowly. Both sides of the courtyard were filled with postnatal experts. Their swords and sabers were unsheathed, gleaming coldly. When they saw that it was Su Zimo, there was a flash of surprise in their eyes. Then they sneered and shook their heads. At the end of the courtyard was the Zhao family's main hall. There was a square table with many people seated. Zhao Yu and Li Yuanmao were both inside. At this moment, Shen Nan brought Su Zimo over and sat down. Su Zimo's expression was normal. He walked slowly into the main hall and swept his gaze across. There were a total of 17 people in the main hall. Apart from Zhao Yu, Li Yuanmao and Shen Nan, the rest were all Khanate experts. One of them was Soul Reaping Sword Tang Mingjun, who had fought with Su Zimo in the Shun family's residence. Among the 14 Khanate experts, 7 of them had a stronger aura than Tang Mingjun. 3 of them had the strongest aura. Unsurprisingly, 4 of them were mid-stage Khanate experts while the other 3 were late-stage Khanate experts. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He already understood the situation. The Zhao family obviously wanted to take drastic measures and cripple the brothers on the spot. Unfortunately, Su Hong was not around. I wanted to catch a big fish, but I didn't expect to catch a small fry. If I had known, I wouldn't have made such a big fuss. Zhao Yu sneered and looked at Su Zimo in disdain. Where is my sister? Su Zimo's tone was calm. There was no fluctuation in his voice. Zhao Yu clapped his hands. At the back of the main hall, 2 ladies walked out side by side. To be precise, one of them was being held hostage. Su Xiaoning was wearing a long green dress and looked very lively. At the age of 15, she was already slender and beautiful. However, at this moment, Su Xiaoning's eyes were filled with tears. She held them back and pursed her lips as she looked at Su Zimo, refusing to say a word. Su Zimo felt a pain in his heart. All these years, Su Zimo had never seen his sister like this. Had she ever suffered such grievances? Li Yuanmao smiled and said, "That's my sister, Li Xiangtong. It seems that she and Miss Su get along very well." The woman beside Su Xiaoning smiled and pulled Su Xiaoning to sit down. She played with a sharp dagger between her fingers and said gently, "Sister, don't cry. Let me help you trim your nails." As she spoke, Li Xiangtong held Su Xiaoning's trembling fingers and slid the dagger across her fingertips. Ah! Li Xiangtong gasped softly and saw a drop of blood oozing out of Su Xiaoning's fingertip. It was a bright red. "Sister, don't shake your hand. Fortunately, I was careful just now. Otherwise, your finger would have been cut off." Li Xiangtong was still smiling like a snake. Su Zimo remained motionless. Li Xiangtong was not a weak woman. She was also an expert in the post-liminary realm. There was a square table between Su Zimo and Li Xiangtong. There were 4 mid-stage Xiantian realm experts, 3 late-stage Xiantian realm experts, and 7 early-stage Xiantian realm experts standing on both sides of Su Zimo. Su Zimo had no way to save him. Good. At this moment, an old man in his 50s sitting in the middle of the square table clapped his hands and nodded. He has a thunderous heart, but his face is as calm as a lake. He is a talent. He is not a nobody. Based on his character, he is worthy of this banquet. Zhao Yu pursed his lips. I am Zhao Chengping, the head of the Zhao family. The old man in his 50s pointed to the person on his left and said, "This is the head of the Li family, Li Xing." As for this, Zhao Chengping looked to his right and said in a low voice, "This is Hero Xingyao from Songlang City. People call him Thunderblade. 3 months ago, the one who died under Su Hong's spear was Hero Zhang's junior. The three of them were all late-stage Xiantian realm experts. Su Zimo remained calm and said slowly, family members should not be implicated in the grudges of the pugilistic world. Let them go. I, Su Zimo, will accompany you. Haha, you are not a pugilistic world expert. You are just a lowly commoner. Li Yuanmao scolded jokingly. Zhao Yu said sarcastically, if it were your brother Su Hong it would be fine. You are not qualified. Brother, leave quickly. Su Xiaoning had just said a few words when Li Xiangtong covered her mouth. She could only make sobbing sounds. She could not control her tears and they rolled down her cheeks. Zhao Chongping sighed. I did not want to lower myself to your level. I was afraid that I would lose my dignity. But the Su family is too arrogant. There was a flash of mockery in Su Zimo's eyes. The Su family will accept any fight between families. Aren't you afraid of being laughed at by others for doing such insidious things? Haha. The head of the Li family, Li Xing, laughed and shook his head. Lad, you are still young. You have not seen much of the evil in the pugilistic world. This is just a small matter. Is Li Xiangtong your daughter? Su Zimo raised his eyebrows and suddenly asked a seemingly unimportant question. So what if she is? Li Xing snorted coldly. Then give me your life. There was a sudden loud shout. It was like a sudden clap of thunder, reverberating in the entire hall. Before the voice died down, Su Zimo took a big stride forward. The power of the plow heaven was unleashed and the square table was overturned instantly, smashing it into pieces. It was too fast. No one expected Su Zimo to make the first move in such an environment when he could not even protect himself. Other than Zhao Yu and the other two, everyone present was a Khanate expert. They reacted quickly and drew their weapons, stabbing at Su Zimo. They scolded, how dare you? In an instant, there were shadows of swords and sabers in all directions. It was so cold that even water could not penetrate it. Thunderbolt sabers, and Yao drew his saber. There was a flash of dazzling cold light and he stabbed at Su Zimo's ribs. Su Zimo ignored the sabers and swords around him as he glared at Li Xing. With a flip of his palm, he slammed it down with a ferocious aura. Earth-shattering palm. Under the pressure of Su Zimo's fierce aura, Li Xing's expression changed. His first thought was to turn around and run. His many years of experience told him that if he turned around, he would definitely die. Li Xing's eyes widened in anger. He roared and raised his arms to block the attack. He did not even have time to draw his weapon. On the other side, Zhao Chongping held his sword with one hand. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. He waved his sword and aimed it at Su Zimo's eyes. Zhao Chongping had heard that Su Zimo was a thwart kung fu master. However, no matter what kind of thwart kung fu master, he could not train his eyes. Crack! The sound of bones cracking was heard. Li Xing screamed. His arms were broken by Su Zimo's palm. The broken bones pierced through his flesh and were exposed. It was a shocking sight. A late-stage Khanate expert could not withstand one strike from Su Zimo. Everyone was shocked. After earth-rupturing palm, Su Zimo closed in and gripped Li Xing's throat, capturing the latter in his hands. At the same time, Su Zimo took a big step to the left. He tilted his head and allowed Zhao Qingping's sword to stab his cheek. His left hand was as soft as a cow's tongue as it rolled forward. Zhao Qingping's sword stabbed Su Zimo's cheek. Not only did it not pierce through, but it also met with great resistance. The sword was bent. Hiss! This guy's thwart kung fu is so strong? Zhao Qingping was shocked. He knew that things were not going well and quickly retreated. At this moment, Su Zimo's palm landed on Zhao Qingping's arm that he did not manage to retract in time. A roll, a shake, and a pull. Puff puff. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. He looked. Zhao Qingping's arm was ripped off from his shoulder by Su Zimo's palm with his tendons and bones shattered. Zhao Qingping fell to the ground. Looking at the blood gushing out from his broken arm, he was horrified and let out a miserable scream. Bang bang bang. At the same time, almost all the swords and sabers landed on Su Zimo's body. They bounced off like leather. Even though Su Zimo's clothes were shredded into pieces, there was no flash of blood. Invulnerable? Even an innate expert with a weapon could not break Su Zimo's defense. Puff! At this moment, the sound of a sharp weapon piercing flesh was heard. A saber was halfway through Su Zimo's ribs. Blood immediately seeped through his clothes. Whether it was Su Zimo or Zhang Yao who was holding the saber, they were both stunned for a moment. Su Zimo did not expect that someone could break his defense. Zhang Yao did not expect that his saber did not kill Su Zimo directly. Instead, it was stuck there and could not move forward. The reason why Zhang Yao earned the nickname Thunderbolt Saber in the underworld was not because of his saber skills, but because of the saber in his hand. It was so sharp that it could cut through hair and cut through iron like it was mud. However, he did not expect that when the Thunderbolt saber stabbed into Su Zimo's body, it was like stabbing into a rock. The resistance grew stronger and stronger until it was stuck in his flesh. This was the horror of the body tempering sutra. Zhang Yao pulled out the Thunderbolt saber and took a few steps back. He did not continue to attack. The fact that Su Zimo had crushed Zhao Qingping earlier on had Zhang Yao wary as well. Moreover, although the saber did not injure Su Zimo severely, it did injure him. If this continued, Su Zimo would not be able to walk out of the Zhao family's door. Stop! Stop! Li Xiangtong and Su Zimo shouted at the same time. It had only been a few seconds since Su Zimo started his attack. The experts in the courtyard had just arrived at the door. When Li Xiangtong reacted, her father was already in Su Zimo's hands. Li Xiangtong held the dagger and placed it on Su Xiaoning's snow-white neck. She shouted, "Let go of my father." Su Zimo grabbed Li Xing's throat. The latter's arms were broken and he had no strength to resist. His face was purplish-red and he was making groaning noises. "Let go of my sister and I'll let him go," Su Zimo said calmly. After confirming Li Xing's identity, Su Zimo had already made his decision. It was difficult to save Su Xiaoning directly. If there was a mistake, Su Xiaoning would die. Su Zimo did not dare to take the risk. However, it was relatively easy to capture Li Xing at the first moment. "Su Zimo, don't force me. If my hand trembles, there will be another wound on your sister's face." Li Xiangtong's dagger was dangling in front of Su Xiaoning's eyes. Su Zimo smiled, revealing a row of white teeth. "If you dare to touch her, I'll slaughter the entire Li family." Su Zimo's tone was very calm. It did not sound like a threat. Instead, it sounded like he was stating a fact. There was an unquestionable, fierce, and domineering aura in his tone. Li Xiangtong's heart trembled. Su Zimo's tone and gaze made her uneasy. She did not doubt Su Zimo's ability. Based on what happened just now, once Su Zimo escaped from this place, the Zhao and Li families would never have a day of peace. He was a more terrifying and ruthless character than Su Hong. What kind of person did we offend? Why did we offend him? Li Xiangtong regretted. Chapter 11. Both parties were in a stalemate. Everyone could tell that Li Xiangtong had lost her composure, and her mind was in a mess. Li Xiangtong turned her head instinctively and looked at her brother, Li Yuanmao, seeking help. Li Yuanmao was about to speak when his expression changed drastically. His eyes were filled with terror. Li Xiangtong's heart sank when she saw Li Yuanmao's strange expression. She exerted force with the dagger in her hand, wanting to stab Su Xiaoning's throat. "You have no chance." This was the last sentence Li Xiangtong heard. Li Xiangtong felt her wrist being gripped so tightly that it was almost crushed. Unknowingly, Su Zimo had already arrived before her. It was a pair of terrifying eyes that exuded a cold and murderous aura. Bam! Li Xiangtong was kicked away by Su Zimo. She was already dead in midair. Everything happened so quickly that no one could react in time. Just now, when Li Xiangtong looked sideways, Su Zimo exerted force with his fingers and crushed Li Xing's throat. He used the plow heaven stride and rushed in front of Li Xiangtong to save Su Xiaoning. Li Yuanmao was completely dumbfounded. This was supposed to be a trap set against the Su brothers. However, in the blink of an eye, one of the 3 late-stage Khanate experts was dead and another was injured. Only Zhang Yao was left. They wanted to lure the snake out of its hole, but instead, they lured a dragon out. Su Xiaoning's delicate body trembled slightly. She sobbed softly and looked at Su Zimo in a daze. Her eyes were filled with fear, unfamiliarity, and panic. Su Zimo's gaze softened and a smile appeared on his face. He tore a piece of cloth from his body and gently covered Su Xiaoning's eyes. He wrapped it a few times and tied it tightly. "Don't be afraid. I will bring you home," Su Zimo whispered in his sister's ear. Zheng Yao witnessed this scene. He was not in a hurry to take action. Instead, he was very confident. If Su Zimo chose to fight his way out of this place alone, Zheng Yao believed that even the hundreds of postnatal experts in the courtyard would not be able to stop him. After that, Zheng Yao would return to Songlang City immediately and bring his family as far away from Pingyang Town as possible to avoid Su Zimo's revenge. But now, the more Su Zimo cared about Su Xiaoning, the slimmer his chances of walking out of this place alive. To Su Zimo, Su Xiaoning was not only a burden, but also his weakness. "Everyone, don't panic. I just injured this kid. He won't be able to hold on for long. Everyone, attack that woman with all your strength," Zheng Yao sneered. Everyone present was experienced. When they heard this, they already understood Zheng Yao's intention. In fact, Su Zimo's injury under his ribs was much lighter than others had imagined. If Su Zimo could see the wound, he would be surprised to find that the muscles around the wound had been petrified and had stopped bleeding. Not only would flesh petrification increase Su Zimo's defense, it also had the effect of stopping bleeding and preserving stamina to the greatest extent. "Attack!" At Zheng Yao's command, everyone roared and charged forward. Su Zimo shielded Su Xiaoning in his arms and retreated rapidly. He faced the postnatal experts with his back. Bang! 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 Blood splattered everywhere. Broken limbs flew everywhere. Sabers and swords were shattered and scattered all over the ground. Mountain Lean. In an instant, all the strength in his body was released. This was the ultimate move of the 3 styles of the rock bear. The people behind Su Zimo were all sent flying. Some of them were even smashed into pieces on the spot. A tragic path of blood appeared in the crowd. Although Su Zimo had only cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness for half a year, and had only cultivated the first chapter, the strength of his body had already reached a terrifying level. Even if he stood still at the same spot, ordinary postnatal and Khanate experts would not be able to hurt him. The reason why Zheng Yao could hurt Su Zimo was because of the thunderbolt saber in his hands. With the explosive force of the mountain lean, the postnatal experts were like clay chickens and pottery dogs in front of Su Zimo. They could not withstand a single blow. This time, Su Zimo was sent flying for more than 10 feet before he could stop. With Zheng Yao as the leader, more than 10 Khanate experts followed him like shadows. They had already closed in on him. Sword chi and saber light were dazzling. Most importantly, the target of these sabers and swords was Su Xiaoning. Su Zimo only had a pair of hands. He could not block the incoming weapons at all. A fierce look flashed across Su Zimo's eyes. He turned his body and with his back facing the Khanate experts, he protected Su Xiaoning and charged forward again. He waved the ground-rupturing palm in his left hand and the bovine-tongued saber in his right hand. Poof! No one was spared from the ground-rupturing palm. Su Zimo's right hand looked weak. However, when he waved it in the air, dozens of weapons were smashed into pieces and scattered all over the ground. In an instant, Su Zimo's aura was overwhelming. He was like a ferocious beast that could devour people. Whoosh! Su Zimo snorted and staggered. There was a flash of blood on his back. Although the Khanate experts did not hurt Su Zimo, Zheng Yao took the opportunity to cut a wound on Su Zimo's back. It was about a foot long and looked ferocious. Although she could not see, Su Xiaoning obviously felt something. "Brother, go. Don't bother about me." Su Xiaoning was sobbing. Su Zimo gritted his teeth. His eyes were ferocious. He said coldly, "Those who stop me will die." Rumble. Su Zimo used the plow heaven stride and exerted force in his legs. 2 trenches appeared on the ground and sand and stones flew everywhere. These sand and stones also contained the power of the plow heaven stride. They crashed into the crowd and caused great damage. Many broken weapons were also kicked into the crowd by Su Zimo. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo rushed to the foot of the wall of the Zhao family's courtyard. Along the way, there were 2 more wounds on Su Zimo's body. One of the wounds was on his back. It was extremely dangerous. If it was an inch deeper, Su Zimo would be a dead man. At this moment, Su Zimo really felt the power of the body tempering sutra. He gradually understood the benefits of soaking in the black liquid for the past 3 months. If it were others, they would have been exhausted and their energy and blood would have been depleted. However, Su Zimo's injuries were not as serious as they looked. Every wound began to petrify and the loss of energy and blood was not much. Of course, if Su Zimo had mastered the petrification of flesh and blood, Zheng Yao would not be able to hurt him even with the thunderbolt saber. Su Zimo protected Su Xiaoning behind him and leaned against the wall. His tattered green robe was already stained with blood. He looked around at the crowd. His eyes were like torches and his eyebrows were full of murderous intent. He was fearless. When the crowd saw Su Zimo's position, they understood his intention. With Su Xiaoning's back facing the wall, there was less of a threat from behind. The pressure on Su Zimo was greatly reduced and he could fight with the experts head-on. As long as Su Zimo did not fall, no one would be able to hurt Su Xiaoning. He won't be able to hold on for long. Kill! Zheng Yao shouted and rushed forward. Su Zimo squinted his eyes and stared at Zheng Yao who was rushing toward him. Among the crowd, only Zheng Yao posed the greatest threat to him. To be precise, it was the thunderbolt saber in Zheng Yao's hand. Swoosh! The long saber pierced through the air with a terrifying momentum. Su Zimo ignored the weapons around him. He suddenly stretched out his palm and placed it on the thunderbolt saber. Roll, shake, pull. Zheng Yao's expression changed. He screamed and the thunderbolt saber flew out of his hand. If the other weapons were enveloped by the force of the bovine-tongued saber, they would have been shattered. However, the thunderbolt saber was intact and Su Zimo pulled it into his hand. Su Zimo held the saber in a reverse grip and waved it forward randomly to block the incoming weapons. Clang! 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 The incoming weapons were all cut into two by the thunderbolt saber. Good saber! Su Zimo laughed and took a step forward. He slashed at Tang Mingjun who was rushing toward him. Tang Mingjun's pupils contracted violently. It was too late for him to dodge. The saber gleam flashed and Tang Mingjun was cut into two by Su Zimo. Blood spurted out and smelly organs fell out. It was disgusting. Su Zimo had never practiced saber techniques. However, the body-tempering scripture trained his physical body. If his physical strength was strong enough and his speed was fast enough, even if his saber techniques were full of flaws, he could still cause great damage. Su Zimo swung his saber. Before anyone could react, he returned to his original position and guarded in front of Su Xiaoning. Zheng Yao had lost his thunderbolt saber. Although there were still hundreds of people on the other side, they could not pose much of a threat to Su Zimo. There was a subtle change in the situation. No matter how they besieged Su Zimo, they could not hurt him. However, whenever they found an opening, Su Zimo would take the initiative to attack and kill one or two people. Su Zimo was unstoppable when he was bare-handed. Moreover, with the thunderbolt saber in his hand, he was like a tiger that had grown wings. The number of people besieging Su Zimo gradually decreased. Among the dozens of Khanate experts, only 4 were left. The reason why they did not retreat was that they were hoping that Su Zimo would be exhausted and fall to the ground. After all, there was a limit to one's strength. Moreover, Su Zimo had a few wounds on his body. Everyone had seen it with their own eyes. This battle had lasted for nearly 4 hours. If it were a normal person with those wounds on his back in such a fierce battle, his blood would have been drained dry. However, the crowd could not see a trace of fatigue on Su Zimo's face. From the beginning to the end, the murderous look in Su Zimo's eyes never dimmed. Instead, it became brighter and brighter. He became more and more courageous as the battle progressed. After some time, Su Zimo suddenly held Su Xiaoning's hand after killing a person. He walked slowly towards the crowd with a murderous look on his face. As Su Zimo moved forward, Zheng Yao and the rest were frightened and retreated instinctively. Suddenly, the crowd realized that at some point in time the hunters had become the prey. Su Zimo lowered his head and looked at the saber in his hand that was still dripping blood. He said softly, "Don't leave today." Chapter 12. The ground vibrated and the sound of hooves thundered. Under the setting sun, a troop of armored cavalry charged into Pingyang town aggressively with spears in their hands. The leader was the Su family's guard, Lu Yu. "Hurry, hurry!" Lu Yu urged continuously. His forehead was covered in sweat and he looked anxious. It had been almost 6 hours since Su Zimo left the Su residence. Even Uncle Zheng, who was usually calm and composed, had an endless amount of worry in his eyes. Lu Yu's gaze froze. Not far away, a few people were fleeing in their direction with pale faces. They seemed to be extremely frightened. These people are the guards of the Zhao family. Lu Yu's killing intent rose, and he wanted to command his subordinates to surround these people. Uncle Zheng suddenly said, "Don't bother about them. Let's go to the Zhao family to save them first." Along the way from Pingyang town to the Zhao family, Uncle Zheng and the rest had seen more than 10 pugilistic experts. All of them looked terrified and were fleeing with all their might. What happened? Uncle Zheng and Lu Yu felt uneasy. Before long, Uncle Zheng and Lu Yu led hundreds of armored cavalry to the entrance of the Zhao family. Just as they were about to break in, the gates of the Zhao family suddenly opened. A man and a woman walked out. The young girl's eyes were covered with a few layers of cloth, and there were sporadic drops of blood on them. Her pretty face was pale and her petite body was still trembling slightly. She looked pitiful. The man's clothes were tattered and stained with blood. He held a blood-stained saber in his left hand and supported the woman with his right hand as they walked out of the Zhao family's residence slowly. Everyone's gazes passed by the couple instinctively and landed on the courtyard of the Zhao family's residence. That was a hair-raising and unforgettable scene. The courtyard was littered with corpses. Scarlet blood was still flowing quietly in the cracks between the stones. Some of the bodies had been split in half, some of the heads had been shattered, and some of the heads had been separated from their bodies. The severed limbs were still twitching unconsciously. There was an aura of death and the stench of blood filled the air. This was simply a tragic and ghastly hell. The man was covered in blood and held a saber in his hand. He looked like a killing god who had just walked out of hell. However, his gaze was still clear. The afterglow of the setting sun shone on the man's delicate and young face, covering it with a mysterious glow. The hundreds of cavalrymen were completely silent. Even the horses beneath them seemed to be intimidated by an invisible aura. They lowered their heads and kept quiet out of fear. The current Su Zimo made everyone feel that he was both unfamiliar and familiar at the same time. Su Xiaoning seemed to have sensed something. She tore off the cloth in front of her eyes and could not help but look back at the Zhao family's courtyard. Su Zimo stretched out his hand and blocked her gaze. He said softly, "Don't look. Go home and rest. Forget about what happened today." Uncle Zheng, Uncle Lu, send Xiaoning home. Su Zimo's tone sounded very calm, but for some reason, everyone present felt panic in their hearts. Uncle Zheng nodded and Lu Yu hurriedly went forward to help Su Xiaoning onto the horse and personally escorted her to the Su mansion. After sending off Lu Yu and the others with his gaze, Su Zimo left slowly. His footsteps were slightly heavy, and he left behind a string of horrifying bloody footprints. Second young master, you, with his back to the crowd, Su Zimo waved his hand and said, "Don't follow me." The hundreds of cavalrymen did not move. No one questioned or objected. It was only when Su Zimo's figure disappeared at the end of the long street that everyone heaved a sigh of relief. In the face of this seemingly frail second young master of the Su family, these warriors who had experienced bloody battles felt pressured and suffocated. "Mr. Zheng, almost everyone inside is dead." There were more than 10 Khanate experts, including the masters of the Zhao and Li families. Yu Qihua ran out from the Zhao family's courtyard and said softly. Everyone was in an uproar. Although everyone was mentally prepared to see the horrifying scene in the Zhao family's courtyard, no one expected that more than 10 Khanate experts would be buried here in just half a day. More importantly, the masters of the Zhao and Li families were dead. Hundreds of martial arts experts were also dead. These two families were as good as removed from Pingyang town. Were all these people killed by the second young master? This was the doubt in everyone's mind. Yu Qihua frowned and said, "Mr. Zheng, I heard from the eldest young master and Lu Yu that the second young master was barely comparable to an early-stage Khanate expert 3 months ago. How did he become so terrifying 3 months later?" Mr. Zheng's expression was complicated. He sighed and said, "We keep some secrets to ourselves. I'm afraid our second young master has many secrets as well." Su Zimo returned to his own residence. The moment he closed the door, A look of deep exhaustion appeared on his face. Although he did not lose much blood from the wounds on his body, it was still unbearable. Moreover, Su Zimo had been fighting for the past 6 hours without rest. His muscles were already sore and swollen. Su Zimo took a short break before walking into the cultivation field. For the past 6 months, Su Zimo realized that he had an inexplicable reliance on the cultivation field. Only when he returned here did he feel like he had returned home. Dayu was still sitting on the green rock. Her expression was cold and she did not even look at Su Zimo. Unknowingly, the wooden tub was filled with a black medicinal liquid that emitted a faint medicinal fragrance. Su Zimo threw away the thunderbolt saber and dragged his heavy body into the wooden tub. Although he felt the coldness of the medicinal liquid, his heart felt warm. Unknowingly, Su Zimo fell asleep. After half a year of cultivation, the breathing method of the body tempering sutra had become a habit. Even in his sleep, Su Zimo was still cultivating and absorbing the essence of the medicinal liquid to temper his skin and flesh. This fight had allowed Su Zimo to touch the threshold of petrifying his flesh and blood. If Su Zimo was awake, he would be surprised to find that the wounds on his body were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. On one hand, it came from the strong regenerative power of his flesh and blood after cultivating the body tempering sutra. On the other hand, it came from the endless essence of the medicinal liquid. The absorption this time was much faster than usual. After sleeping for 6 hours, Su Zimo woke up. His fatigue from before was swept away and his body was filled with energy. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. He touched the area where he was injured today. However, he could not feel any scars, only smooth skin. What a strong healing ability! Su Zimo was secretly shocked. At the same time, Su Zimo had a flash of inspiration and secretly channeled the mental sutra of petrifying his flesh and blood. Su Zimo could clearly feel his muscles tightening instantly. Every inch of his flesh and blood was squeezed together without any gaps and was as hard as a rock. This can be considered as a blessing in disguise. Su Zimo lamented to himself, if not for the stimulation of such external injuries, it would be difficult to understand the mysteries of petrifying flesh and blood within a short period of time. Su Zimo stood up and said to Dayu, "I'm going out for a while." Dayu did not seem to hear him and seemed to be resting with her eyes closed. Su Zimo walked out of the cultivation field and returned to his room to change into a green robe. He then headed straight to the Su family's residence. Su Zimo had been suppressing his anger for what happened today. He was not angry at the Zhao and Li families, but at the Su family and his elder brother, Su Hong. It was late at night and there was no one on the long street. Su Zimo executed the plow heaven stride and sprinted. He arrived at the Su family's residence in no time. The main door of the Su family's residence was not closed. Instead, it was wide open. Su Zimo pondered for a while and walked towards Uncle Zheng's residence. The small courtyard was not big. There was a round stone table in the middle. Uncle Zheng was sitting there and he seemed to have been waiting for a long time. "Second young master, you still came." Uncle Zheng was a little emotional. Su Zimo sat by the stone table and looked into Uncle Zheng's eyes. He said in a low voice, "Since you know my intention, why are you still hiding it?" Uncle Zheng smiled bitterly and shook his head. "Since we were young, elder brother did not allow us to learn martial arts and sent us to study outside. He also did not allow us to interfere in the family business. There were too many things. Elder brother intentionally or unintentionally kept Xiaoning and me away from the Su family. Xiaoning is simple-minded and she could not feel it. But I have long sensed it." Su Zimo said softly, "If Xiaoning had started learning martial arts earlier, she might not have met with this today. I can see that the people behind Uncle Zheng today are all experienced postnatal experts. Since the family has such power, why didn't they reveal it earlier? What kind of business is elder brother doing? Is he just selling horses? Why did he go to the country of Yan to do business instead of the country of Dachi?" Uncle Zheng looked troubled. He wanted to say something but stopped. Both of them were silent and the atmosphere became extremely oppressive. Su Zimo said something shocking. He suddenly said, "My parents were killed by someone, right?" Uncle Zheng's expression changed and returned to normal in an instant. "Uncle Zheng, Zimo is no longer the weak scholar he used to be. I believe you can also see what the Su family is afraid of. Who is the enemy of the Su family?" Tell me. Su Zimo held Uncle Zheng's arm, his eyes emitting a cold light. Uncle Zheng sighed. Second young master, it's not that I don't want to say it. It's that it won't do you any good if I say it. You are indeed different from before and have become stronger. You can even kill many postnatal experts. But, after pausing for a while, Uncle Zheng shook his head and said, but that is only the power of a mortal. Those familiar words seemed like déjà vu half a year ago. Before Shun Mengqi left, she told Su Zimo that even if he could reach the postnatal realm in the future, it would only be the power of a mortal. He would not be able to withstand a blow from an immortal. Su Zimo understood the meaning behind Uncle Zheng's words. It was just that he did not expect that many years ago, the enemy of the Su family was the legendary cultivators. As for Su Zimo himself, he had also offended perfected Jin Dan by accident. Everything seemed to be fate. After going around in circles, he could not walk out of that circle. What is the realm of the Su family's enemy? Chi refinement warrior? Foundation establishment cultivator or perfected Jin Dan? Su Zimo asked indifferently. He had long heard from Daiyu that in cultivation, mortals at the Qi condensation realm were called Qi refinement warriors. They were divided into 10 levels. The 10th level was the perfected level. Only foundation establishment cultivators could be called perfected Jin Dan cultivators. Uncle Zheng clearly did not expect Su Zimo to know these cultivation terms. He was shocked. After a moment, Uncle Zheng said, foundation establishment cultivators and perfected Jin Dan cultivators are too far away from us. Even Qi refinement warriors are not something that ordinary mortals can withstand. Although you can kill Khanate experts now, against a Qi refinement warrior, even a level 1 Qi refinement warrior, is enough to kill you. Su Zimo frowned slightly. Naturally, Su Zimo did not believe Uncle Zheng's words. According to Daiyu, demonic cultivation was also a type of cultivation. It was definitely not weaker than the immortal, Buddhist and fiend sections. Now that he had already mastered the body tempering section of the classic of the 12 demons of the Great Wilderness, how could he not even take down a level 1 Qi refinement warrior? Furthermore, the 2 killings in the past 6 months had boosted Su Zimo's confidence greatly. Uncle Zheng, you mean that if I master the power to kill a Qi refinement warrior, you will tell me everything and no longer hide it from me? Su Zimo asked again. This? Uncle Zheng hesitated. Second young master, you do not have a spirit root. You can only be immortal for the rest of your life. You will never be able to fight against immortals. Su Zimo scoffed coldly. He recalled what Daiyu said and blurted out, what kind of dogs hit immortals are Qi refinement warriors? Even perfected Jin Dan cultivators do not dare to call themselves immortals. Back then, when Daiyu said that, Su Zimo was stunned speechless by her arrogance. Right now, Uncle Zheng had the same expression. His mouth was slightly agape and his face was filled with shock. Let's wait for young master to return before we talk about this. Uncle Zheng finally relented. Alright, I'll ask big brother when he returns. Su Zimo did not linger and turned to leave. Chapter 13. Under the cover of the night, Su Zimo returned to the cultivation field. He saw Daiyu and asked, Miss Dai, I have already mastered the body tempering section. Although it is only at the initial stage, how confident are I of defeating a level 1 Qi refinement warrior? You will definitely die. Daiyu shot a glance at Su Zimo and said coldly. Su Zimo stood rooted to the ground, unable to hide the disappointment in his eyes. When he heard Uncle Zheng's words previously, he felt disdain and thought that he could easily suppress a Qi refinement warrior. He did not expect that, at the same time, Su Zimo also had doubts in his heart. Since demonic cultivation was also a form of cultivation, why could he not even defeat a level 1 Qi refinement warrior? Daiyu seemed to have seen through Su Zimo's thoughts and said lightly, your current strength is enough to kill a level 4 Qi refinement warrior. However, you do not know how to fight. There are too many factors that affect a battle and strength is only one of them. Kill a level 4 Qi refinement warrior. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he gradually came to his senses. It was not that he did not have enough strength, but that he lacked combat skills. This was just like a peerless saber. When it landed in the hands of different people, the lethality it could unleash would naturally be different. Even so, Su Zimo was still indignant. He raised his voice and said, I know a little about combat. Even if hundreds of pugilistic experts besieged me, I can also fight my way out. Is it worth bragging about being beaten up so badly by a bunch of mortals? Dai Yu sneered and waved her hand gently. The thunderbolt saber that was originally stuck in the ground seemed to be pulled by an invisible force and floated in the air. Quick! Dai Yu stretched out her finger and pointed in the direction of Su Zimo from a few feet away. Swoosh! The saber gleam flashed and the thunderbolt saber was already in front of Su Zimo. It hung in the middle of his brows and did not move an inch. It was too fast. There was no time to react. Dai Yu said leisurely, this is the most common attack method of a Qi refinement warrior. Using spirit Qi to control the spirit weapon. If you fought with a Qi refinement warrior, you would be a dead man now. It's so fast. How can I dodge it? Su Zimo was a little confused. Dai Yu said demons have two abilities that are far beyond what cultivators can do. Firstly, his physical body was strong. Secondly, his spiritual sense was sharp. You must remember that the bodies of most cultivators are relatively weak. As long as you can avoid their first wave of attacks and shorten the distance between you, you will be able to execute them with the powerful melee combat ability of the demon clan. Su Zimo frowned and pondered. After a while he asked, I know that the body is strong. The purpose of the body tempering manual is to strengthen the body. What is the spiritual sense? Dai Yu said, spiritual sense is hard to describe. You can understand it as a sense of danger. The demon race believes in the law of the jungle, where the strong preys on the weak. If you don't have a sharp spiritual sense, you will be eliminated and exterminated. Cicada seers? Su Zimo's eyes lit up. Dai Yu nodded. How do I cultivate my spiritual sense? Su Zimo asked again. Simple. The corner of Dai Yu's lips curled into a strange smile. Suddenly she waved her sleeve towards Su Zimo. Whoosh! The space was distorted and he could not see. Su Zimo felt as though he had lost all his senses. In an instant he seemed to have been brought to another place. Where is this? After regaining his senses, Su Zimo looked around. The surroundings were silent and pitch black, giving off a primitive and savage aura that filled the air eerily. Dai Yu said casually, this is Conglang Mountain Range. If you can survive here for a year, you will have cultivated your spiritual sense. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Conglang Mountain Range was dozens of kilometers away from Pingyang Town. It was famous for being a dangerous place where demon beasts roamed freely. It was impossible to pass through at night. Previously, he had heard many legends about Conglang Mountain Range. There were demons that sucked the essence of humans and ferocious beasts with eyes as big as bronze bells. Of course, the overlords of Conglang Mountain Range were the wolves that were the most numerous. They were bloodthirsty, violent, and extremely vengeful. A few decades ago, a hunter from a nearby village caught a wolf cub from the mountain range. Unexpectedly, that night, the village was swallowed by thousands of wolves. Not a single person was spared and it became a ghost village. No one dared to stay there. The surrounding vassal states were helpless against Conglang Mountain Range. No army dared to enter it. Not to mention surviving in there, wanting to cross it safely was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Dai Yu continued, demons are also divided into different levels. The lowest level is not even qualified to be called a demon. In the cultivation world, they are called spirit beasts, which are psychic beasts. There are strong and weak spirit beasts. Your Zhuifeng is the weakest spirit beast. It has just gained sentience. As for strong spirit beasts, they are comparable to a level 10 perfected Qi refinement warrior. Those above spirit beasts are called spirit demons. The difference in strength is even greater. The strong ones are comparable to perfected Jin Dan while the weak ones are comparable to foundation establishment cultivators. Su Zimo frowned and asked, are there spirit demons in Conglang Mountain Range? According to Dai Yu, he could not even defeat the most ordinary Qi refinement warrior, let alone spirit demons that were comparable to foundation establishment cultivators and Jin Dan cultivators. I don't know. Dai Yu smiled faintly. Su Zimo was stunned. What kind of answer was this? Su Zimo believed that it was impossible for Dai Yu not to know. The only possibility was that Dai Yu did not wish to say. Dai Yu said lightly, this is a test. If you survive, you will completely transform and unleash the true power of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. If you cannot endure, you will end up being eaten by the spirit beasts and everything will be over. Su Zimo realized that if he were to survive in Songlang mountain range for a year, he would definitely face all kinds of spirit beasts. Danger was everywhere. This was a cruel test. Of course, this was also a form of training, a life and death experience. Only between life and death could one hone a strong spirit perception. Daiyu said, "It's not too late to regret now. If you decide to continue staying here, I will not care about you. 1 year later, if you do not appear in Pingyang town, I will leave." Regret? Su Zimo smiled. Regardless of whether it was for Zhou Dingyun who could return at any time, or for the enemies of the Su family, or to seek revenge for Zhui Feng, he had no choice. 1 year later I will return alive. In the darkness, Su Zimo's eyes were clear and bright, determined and persistent. Su Zimo took a pen and paper from Daiyu and wrote a line of words on the paper. "I have something to do. Don't miss me." Su Zimo folded the paper and passed it to Daiyu. He said, "Think of a way to send this to the Su residents. Uncle Zheng can recognize my handwriting." Daiyu nodded and said, "There are still 6 hours before daybreak. I will impart the Tendon's transformation chapter to you. I will leave before daybreak. You only have 6 hours to cultivate. Make good use of it." A sutra appeared in Su Zimo's mind once again. The mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. The body tempering chapter is the foundation. If the skin and flesh are not tough enough, once you cultivate the Tendon's transformation chapter, the skin and flesh will explode and the person will be crippled. The Tendon's transformation technique is derived from the giant python demon king and the sanguine ape demon king. First, cultivate the python, then the ape. The python is the most agile. It has the ability to move grass, coil and bend. The ape has the spirit to move mountains and the skill to climb rocks. Initial success in the Tendon's transformation will increase the body's flexibility greatly. It will be as agile as a python, as light as an ape, as fast as the wind and as fast as an arrow. There will also be a rise in strength. When the tendons tremble, there will be the sound of a bowstring vibrating. Greater success in the tendons transformation will allow the skin, flesh and tendons to coordinate perfectly. It can stretch and contract the tendons and change the appearance of the body. Unless a nascent soul Taoist uses his divine senses, he will not be able to see through it. Daiyu explained the profoundness of the Tendon's transformation chapter. In the depths of the forest, it was dark and quiet. Even the chirping of cicadas could not be heard. Only the woman's pleasant and lazy voice echoed. The green-robed scholar beside the woman listened attentively. Time passed and the night gradually faded. When the first rays of the morning sun broke through the fog and landed in the forest, Daiyu stopped what she was doing and turned to look at Su Zimo, saying softly, "I'm leaving." In Su Zimo's memories, he had never seen Daiyu speak to him in such a tone. For some reason, Su Zimo felt a strange feeling in his heart. As if possessed, Su Zimo asked, "If I'm in danger, will you really leave me in the lurch?" The moment he asked that, Su Zimo regretted it. "Indeed," Daiyu sneered. "What does your life or death have to do with me?" Those words sounded cold-blooded and unreasonable. Su Zimo asked for a snub and remained silent with an embarrassed expression. Daiyu turned and left. In the blink of an eye, she disappeared into the forest. Su Zimo stood alone at the same spot. Just as he was feeling a little disappointed, Daiyu's voice sounded again. It went further and further away and gradually became silent. Songlang Mountain Range is the world of demons. It's even more so at night. If you can survive the first month, you have a 30% chance of walking out alive after a year. Su Zimo was invigorated. No matter what, Daiyu was not completely indifferent to him. Otherwise, she would not have imparted the Tendon's transformation chapter to him last night. Even if I survive the first month, I only have a 30% chance? Su Zimo was secretly shocked. He looked around with a vigilant expression. After confirming that there was no danger around, he tied the thunderbolt saber to his back and sat cross-legged, recalling the content of the Tendon's transformation chapter. If he wanted to survive in Songlang Mountain Range, he had to master the Tendon's transformation chapter as soon as possible. According to Daiyu, once he achieved initial success in the Tendon's transformation chapter, His strength would be able to threaten a level 8 Qi refinement warrior. This also meant that he could kill most of the spirit beasts in Songlang Mountain range. His chances of survival would be greatly increased. Su Zimo breathed and exhaled continuously, trying hard to find the feeling of the tendon's transformation chapter. Perhaps it was because of the foundation of the body tempering chapter or the pressure of being in a dangerous situation. Su Zimo had a preliminary mastery of the breathing technique of the tendon's transformation chapter in no time. This time, without needing Dai Yu's reminder, Su Zimo linked the body tempering and tendon's transformation chapters together and cultivated them together. Every time Su Zimo breathed and exhaled, not only did it temper his skin and flesh, it also began to temper and nourish his large tendons, making them more flexible and strong. Su Zimo was immersed in cultivation and momentarily forgot where he was. After an unknown period of time, Su Zimo suddenly felt liquid dripping on his face. It was a little warm and sticky. It's raining. Just as this thought arose, Su Zimo suddenly opened his eyes and his expression changed drastically. That was not right. Why would the raindrops be warm and sticky? Su Zimo was suddenly jolted awake. He finally realized that he was in the extremely dangerous Songlang Mountain range, and not the original cultivation field. There was danger. Chapter 14. An unprecedented sense of fear emerged. Su Zimo felt his scalp tingle and his hair stand on end. Without hesitation, Su Zimo channeled his strength into his legs and dashed out before he could even stand up. Whoosh! A stinking wind blew. Su Zimo dodged it and couldn't help but look back. Su Zimo's pupils contracted and his heart jumped to his throat. This was a giant python that was beyond Su Zimo's knowledge. Its huge body was really as thick as a water bucket, and its body was covered in dense scales that shone with a cold metallic luster. It stared with a pair of green triangular eyes and opened its bloody mouth, saliva dripping from between its teeth. Too careless. Su Zimo was scared. He was so close to such a big guy, and he didn't even notice it. The gigantic anaconda coiled around an ancient tree that was as tall as the clouds and looked down at Su Zimo with a mocking look in its eyes. Spirit beast. Such a human-like look in a giant python's eyes proved that it was psychic. Its intelligence was no different from a human's except that it couldn't speak. Although there was a huge gap between the size of a human and a python, Su Zimo didn't show any fear after he calmed down. Instead, he was eager to try. This was a rare opportunity. The giant python's eyes were cold. It attacked first. Its huge body landed on the ground and twisted in the grass. It was quiet and agile. It was very fast, and in the blink of an eye, it was in front of Su Zimo. Not good. Su Zimo was shocked. The giant python slithered in the grass and its head was erratic. Su Zimo couldn't grasp it, and all the methods he had prepared were wasted. If he chose to attack and missed, he would die. In a flash, Su Zimo exerted strength in his legs and retreated quickly. Right then, a gust of wind that was as strong as a knife blew over. Before Su Zimo could react, his body was swept away by the python's tail and he was sent flying. Bang! 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 After breaking 3 ancient trees, Su Zimo's body fell to the ground. He spat out a mouthful of blood, his face pale. This collision caused great damage to Su Zimo. At this moment, Su Zimo felt as if his bones and tendons were about to break. The pain was unbearable, and he was unable to continue fighting. To think that I would end up like this just because of a single move. Before Su Zimo could finish his thought, he saw the giant python chasing after him again, and a black shadow shrouded him. Su Zimo clenched his teeth, pulled out the thunderbolt saber on his back, and slashed forward with all his might. Blood flashed. The giant python let out a sorrowful cry as a bloody wound appeared on its head. One of its eyes had been blinded. The giant python was severely injured, and its huge body kept rolling on the ground. The surrounding trees were all broken, and the momentum was terrifying. Su Zimo knew that even if this giant python was injured, he was no match for it. The strength of the two was simply not on the same level. Moreover, Su Zimo was more seriously injured. If he was hit by the giant python that was in a frenzy again, he would definitely die on the spot. Su Zimo did not dare to stay any longer. He executed the plow heaven stride and fled far away. Before he could run far, Su Zimo felt weak all over. His chest was stuffy, and he could not help but spit out another mouthful of blood. During the battle at the Zhao family, although Su Zimo was covered in blood, they were all external injuries. The strength of a Khanate expert was not enough to penetrate his skin and flesh. Just now the giant python's tail not only smashed Su Zimo's chest into a bloody mess, but also injured his internal organs. If Su Zimo had not executed the petrification of flesh at the last moment, his body would have exploded. Am I going to die here on the first day? Su Zimo bit the tip of his tongue gently and tried to stay awake. He thought to himself, I have to find a place to hide as soon as possible. Otherwise, any spirit beast that I encounter can easily kill me. After running for a while, there was a steep mountain wall in front of him. There was a cave a few feet above the ground. Su Zimo's eyes lit up. Su Zimo came to the mountain wall and used the Thunder Rush Saber to dig holes in it. He climbed up gradually. Stepping on these holes, Su Zimo climbed up the mountain wall and looked into the cave carefully. He did not discover any danger before he flipped over and went in. This struggle had already exhausted the last of Su Zimo's strength. This cave was not big, and could barely fit 2 or 3 people. Fortunately, the location was good and could avoid most of the land beasts. Su Zimo lay in the cave and perked himself up. He kept breathing and using the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness to heal the injuries on his body. Time flew by and the sun was setting. On the first night, Su Zimo followed beside Dayu, and did not feel the terror of Songlang mountain range. Last night it was silent as if all life had gone into hiding. But now night had just fallen and spirit beasts had begun to appear. Their roars shook the wilderness. Occasionally there would be gigantic flying beasts flying over the mountain wall, casting shadows that covered the sky and the moon. In the forest, spirit beasts ran amok and ancient trees swayed. A terrifying aura filled the air and terrifying roars could be heard continuously. This was the real Songlang mountain range. If not for Dayu's company last night, Su Zimo would not have survived the first night. Just earlier, Su Zimo saw with his own eyes a spider with a human face. It was the size of a water basin and was crawling towards the mountain wall at an extremely fast speed. Unexpectedly, a black shadow flashed across the mountain wall and wrapped around the spider's body, disappearing into the crevice of the stone wall. Just as Su Zimo was trembling in fear, a ferocious roar sounded from the skies. Immediately after, a divine eagle with purple wings tore through the air. Its claws were extremely sharp and shone with a cold glint. Like daggers, it dug into the crevices of the mountain wall and crushed a large piece of rock. Ow! A tragic cry came from the crevice of the stone wall. The purple-winged eagle's metal claws had already caught a crawling spirit beast. Its claws pierced deeply into the spirit beast's body and fresh blood spurted out. This spirit beast's body was huge and was a few times bigger than the purple-winged eagle. However, no matter how hard it struggled, it could not escape and was carried away by the purple-winged eagle. Before leaving, the purple-winged eagle had obviously noticed Su Zimo. It even turned back to look at the cave on the mountain wall with a cold gaze. Perhaps Su Zimo was too thin and weak compared to the crawling spirit beast. The purple-winged eagle did not bother about him and flapped its wings to leave. Just one look was enough to make Su Zimo's heart skip a beat and his hair stand on end. Spirit demon. This purple-winged eagle was definitely a spirit demon. It's too powerful. Just the aura it exuded was enough to make me unable to resist. I don't know if it's a spirit demon of the Foundation Establishment realm, or the Jindan realm. Su Zimo swallowed his saliva and moved deeper into the cave. Below the mountain wall and in the forest, killing was everywhere. The air became moist and bloody. Just now was only a small part of it. This was the Songlang mountain range. It was bloody, brutal and filled with the most primitive killing. After enduring the second night with much difficulty, Su Zimo realized that he was faced with another test. After a night, Su Zimo's injuries had not healed. However, he did not dare to continue cultivating. In Pingyang town, Su Zimo did not have to worry about food. However, in the Songlang mountain range, this became his biggest problem. Su Zimo was injured and did not dare to act rashly. However, without food, every time Su Zimo breathed in and out, he would be refining the essence of his own flesh and blood. This would only increase his hunger, and he would not be able to hold on for long. This was a vicious cycle. Without food, it meant that there was no source of energy and there was no way to cultivate. It would be difficult for his injuries to heal, and it would be difficult for him to advance in his realm. It would be even more difficult for him to obtain food. Every move he made next would determine Su Zimo's fate. Su Zimo moved his body and used the thunderbolt saber to dig deeper into the cave. He placed some branches and leaves at the entrance of the cave to better conceal himself. 1 day, 2 days, under the torment of pain and hunger, Su Zimo continued to wait patiently and did not leave the cave. On the 3rd day, Su Zimo finally saw a turning point. There were many killings below the mountain wall last night. One of the spirit beasts died and there was still a lot of flesh and blood left on its body. Su Zimo stared at the remains of the spirit beast and pondered for a long time. Finally, he made up his mind and walked out of the cave with the thunderbolt saber. Worried that he would attract other spirit beasts, Su Zimo did not dare to start a fire. He endured the nausea and devoured the flesh and blood mouthful by mouthful. His eyes scanned the surroundings constantly and he was tense. Su Zimo did not dare to bring the spirit beast back to the cave for fear that the smell of blood would expose the location of the cave. Only 3 days had passed and Su Zimo had completely lost his bookishness and naivety. He was unusually calm and was like the most primitive human race, carefully struggling to survive in the wilderness and eating raw flesh and blood. After cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, Su Zimo had a huge appetite. In a short while, he finished the flesh and blood of the spirit beast. Back in the cave, Su Zimo immediately began to cultivate. As he cultivated, Su Zimo noticed a difference. The energy essence contained in the flesh and blood of spirit beasts was much richer than that of ordinary cows and sheep. Eating the flesh and blood allowed the essence to enter his stomach directly without any leakage. Before this, Su Zimo only needed half a day to refine the energy in the flesh and blood of a cow. But this time Su Zimo cultivated for a full day and night. Of course the benefits were obvious. The injuries caused by the giant python had healed and the body tempering and tendons transformation sections had improved significantly. For the next period of time Su Zimo did not go too far. He spent most of his time in the cave cultivating the tendons transformation section. Occasionally, he would secretly observe the techniques used by the spirit beasts at the foot of the mountain to gain insights. After gaining some insights, Su Zimo went out to find some spirit beasts to kill. He cultivated his spirit perception and honed his martial techniques. Although he lost more than he won and was even covered in injuries and looked pathetic, with the body tempering and tendons transformation sections as his foundation, Su Zimo was able to escape alive. Between life and death he continued to summarize, comprehend and cultivate. 3 months later, Su Zimo returned to the old haunt. He found the giant python and killed it with his bare hands. From that day onwards, Su Zimo left the cave that he had lived in for a long time and wandered between the mountains and valleys. He passed through the dense forests and swamps and fought with all kinds of flying spirit beasts. This was a world where the strong preyed on the weak and was drenched in blood. There was no such thing as the strongest. One moment he was still awe-inspiring. The next moment, he could end up in the stomachs of other spirit beasts. Through countless bloody battles and near-death experiences, Su Zimo had always been vigilant and tense. Over time he developed a unique sense of danger that was indescribable. That was his spirit perception. In this mountain range that almost no one paid attention to, a human youth with an incomplete spirit root was undergoing a metamorphosis. His monstrous appearance was beginning to show. Chapter 15. Half a year later. Songlang City, City Lord's residence. The City Lord of Songlang City, Luo Tianwu, leaned back in his chair, resting his chin on his arm. His eyes seemed to be closed as he frowned and pondered. "City Lord, you called for me?" After a while, Chao Gang, one of the 5 wolf guards, walked in. He cupped his fists and bowed. "Yes." Luo Tianwu opened his eyes. There was a flash of light in his eyes. He asked casually, "What do you think of the Su family in Pingyang town?" Chao Gang said in a low voice, "The Su family has a mysterious background. They should not be from the Qi kingdom. I speculate that they should be from the Yan kingdom. Moreover, I suspect that the Su family is not as weak as they seem. The eldest young master of the Su family has been hiding his abilities for so many years. I reckon that he is up to something. As for the second young master of the Su family, Chao Gang paused. Luo Tianwu looked curious. He asked with a half-smile, "What about the second young master of the Su family? A year ago, I saw the second young master of the Su family offending an immortal with my own eyes." This lad was able to calm down quickly after encountering such an unforeseen event. He understood the temperament of perfected Song Lang, and provoked him to save his life. He is quite clever. Chao Gang shook his head and said, "It is a pity that he is a weak scholar. Now that his scholarly achievements have been stripped, he has become a commoner. We can ignore him." "Clever? Haha." Luo Tianwu chuckled. "Chao Gang, you have misjudged him this time." "Huh." Chao Gang was stunned. "This is the information brought back by my secret agent. Take a look." Luo Tianwu threw a few secret documents on the table to Chao Gang. Chao Gang scanned them and his expression changed gradually. Luo Tianwu said in a low voice, "Half a year ago, Su Zimo destroyed almost all the experts from the Zhao and Li families on his own. These two families only exist in name in Pingyang town. The Yang family avoided a calamity and took the opportunity to express their goodwill. Now the Su family has the upper hand in Pingyang town. This lad is not a weak scholar. He is someone more terrifying than Su Hong." "How is this possible?" Chao Gang was shocked. Luo Tianwu Dao. "There are only two possibilities. First, Su Zimo transformed from a weak scholar to a top expert in half a year. Second, Su Zimo hid his strength and deceived everyone. No matter which possibility it is, it proves that this child is not an ordinary person. What is the Su family trying to do?" Chao Gang frowned. Luo Tianwu snorted softly. "People of Yin country 15 years ago, surnamed Su. Can't you guess when you put these pieces of information together?" "Wu Ding Duke of the Yin Kingdom, Su Mu." Chao Gang exclaimed. Luo Tianwu nodded and lamented. Su Mu can be considered a hero of his generation. His 10,000 black armored cavalry swept through the battlefield and was invincible. How awe-inspiring was he back then? Which of the surrounding vassal states dared to face him head-on? It's a pity that he was too foolish, and in the end, he ended up in a situation where he had to put away the bow after the birds were gone and cook the hound after the hares were gone. After pausing for a while, Luo Tianwu narrowed his eyes and exuded a sharp aura. He said slowly, "Since there is a precedent, I cannot follow in Su Mu's footsteps. Although the great Zhou dynasty is ruling over the 4 regions now, the world is in chaos and the vassal states are rising. This is the best time to attack the city and seize the land, taking the opportunity to proclaim myself king." Chao Gang is willing to follow the city lord. Follow the king. Chao Gang was very perceptive and changed his words immediately. Luo Tianwu nodded in satisfaction and said, "Chao Gang, I also have the support of Qi refinement warriors behind me. I will not act rashly." Upon hearing the words Qi refinement warriors, Chao Gang's eyes lit up and he was energized. "Since the Su family has such a background, I can make use of it." Luo Tianwu revealed a playful smile. Songlang Mountain Range. After half a year of wandering, Su Zimo's realm of Tenden's transformation had improved by leaps and bounds. He was close to initial success. After practicing the python, he began to practice the ape. More importantly, Su Zimo had a spiritual perception similar to that of a wild beast. It was unusually sharp. With this spiritual perception, Su Zimo had escaped death several times and even avoided some spirit demons. However, in the recent month, Su Zimo had met with trouble. The overlord of Songlang Mountain Range, the huge number of wolves. He had once encountered a blue wolf and killed it after a bloody battle. However, he did not expect to be hunted down endlessly by the blue wolf race. If it was a one-on-one battle, most of the wolves were not Su Zimo's match. However, the most terrifying thing about the wolf clan was their patience and sense of smell. Su Zimo had shaken off the wolf pack several times. However, not long after, the wolf pack would chase after him again by following his aura. This pursuit had already lasted for close to a month. If not for Su Zimo's strong stamina and the 2 demon classics of body tempering and Tenden's transformation as his foundation, he might have died from exhaustion. After a long and endless escape, Su Zimo's clothes had long been torn apart by the spirit beasts in the fierce battle. He was wrapped in beast skins haphazardly and had a circle of black stubble on his face. He was no different from a savage. In the past few days, the wolf clan seemed to have sensed that Suzimo's stamina had reached its limit. They followed him even tighter and harassed him continuously. There were a few shocking wounds on Suzimo's body. Although they were no longer bleeding, they had not healed completely. The wolf pack did not give Suzimo any time to recuperate. Suzimo knew that if this continued, his condition would only worsen. However, he could not think of any way to avoid the wolf pack's pursuit. That night, Suzimo arrived at a valley. He was halfway through when he suddenly stopped in his tracks with a grim expression. A cold wind blew across his face with a hint of killing intent. In front of and behind him, pairs of dark green wolf eyes appeared with a ferocious glint. Wolves walked out of the darkness one after another, and surrounded Suzimo in the middle of the valley. On both sides of the valley, there were also many wolf tracks howling at the moon. "They're finally here." Suzimo licked his dry lips and his eyes were filled with killing intent. After a month of sleepless nights, Suzimo's spirit perception was at its lowest. That was why he was surrounded by the wolf pack. Of course, the battle and escape during this period of time was enough to prove that the wolf pack's intelligence was extremely high. The current situation was also carefully arranged by them. When Suzimo's stamina and mental state were at their limits, the wolf pack launched the final battle. Before this, Suzimo rarely used sabers. On the one hand, he did not know saber techniques. On the other hand, it was to train his melee combat strength as much as possible. Now, Suzimo pulled out the thunderbolt saber on his back and prepared for the final battle. "Awoo!" The alpha wolf stood on top of the valley and howled. On both sides of the valley, the wolf pack swarmed forward. Poof! Suzimo swung his saber and slashed the wolf that was the first to charge forward into two. Fresh blood gushed out. Bam! Suzimo used his right hand with the earth-shattering palm and slapped the head of another wolf heavily. Brain juice burst out. Killing could not stop the wolf pack. Instead, it aroused their ferocity. Stepping on the corpses of their own kind, the wolf pack continued to pounce forward. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Suzimo used the plow heaven stride. Holding the saber in his left hand and using his right hand to punch her palm, he galloped in the wolf pack, charging left and right. If someone was watching the battle at the side, they would be shocked to discover that, even under the attack of such a dense wolf pack, Suzimo could still avoid most of the attacks and avoid the vital parts of his body. Seeing that there was a sharp wolf claw that was about to pierce into Suzimo's head, he did not even look. Instead, he suddenly dodged and punched the wolf, sending it flying. This was the spirit perception. Not seeing, not smelling, and avoiding danger. Compared to half a year ago, Suzimo's attacking methods had become simpler and more direct. They were clean and efficient but extremely effective. Suzimo was no longer restricted to moves. Head, shoulders, elbows, fists, knees, and back could all be used to kill the enemy. This was a close combat technique that was honed through killing. It was filled with the taste of blood. Swift, fierce, and vicious. Slash. Another wound appeared on Suzimo's body. Fresh blood was dripping from it. Even with the help of a strong spirit perception, Suzimo's physical strength was gradually depleted under such an impenetrable attack. After a fierce battle, the wounds on his body that had not healed previously opened up again. Fresh blood flowed continuously. His chi and blood were not strong enough. Suzimo felt dizzy. "I can't hold on for much longer." Suzimo gritted his teeth. His gaze was fixed on the head wolf that was more than 10 feet tall, and had a body that was comparable to a colossus. He did not care about the attacks from the two sides behind him. He unleashed the plow heaven stride and charged forward. Mountain leaning. Bam, bam, bam. A few wolves were sent flying on the spot. Blood splattered everywhere. At the same time, Suzimo was also attacked crazily. There were many injuries on his body. A wolf tore off a piece of flesh from his thigh. Suzimo's legs turned to jelly and he almost knelt on the ground. As if it had sensed Suzimo's intention, a hint of sarcasm flashed across the snow-white head wolf's eyes. At this moment, the wolf pack dispersed. The head wolf walked over slowly with the posture of a king. Its entire body exuded an endless murderous intent. Suzimo stared at the head wolf that was getting closer and closer. His left palm that was holding the saber was covered in sweat. He secretly took a deep breath and prepared for the final fight. He would not be able to escape death today. If he could kill the head wolf of the wolf pack before he died, it would be considered a gain. Swoosh! The head wolf leaped. Its violent aura covered the sky and covered the earth. Su Zimo opened his mouth and took a deep breath. It was as if he wanted to swallow the sun and moon. His chest was high and the flesh on the surface of his body was wriggling. His large tendons were entwined together as if countless giant pythons were entwining them. Hiss hiss! The air rushed into his lungs crazily, making a strange sound. Anaconda Eclipse. One of the moves in the tendons transformation section. It pulled the tendons and could burst forth with the greatest strength in an instant. Su Zimo swung the thunderbolt saber with one arm and slashed it at the head of the head wolf. At the same time, he gathered strength in his right hand and unleashed the earth-shattering palm. This was already Su Zimo's strongest attack. Fear flashed across the eyes of the head wolf. Its huge body was extremely agile. It dodged in the air and avoided the oncoming thunderbolt saber. Its wolf claws landed on Su Zimo's chest. This claw could have directly penetrated Su Zimo's chest. However, at the same time, Su Zimo's earth-shattering palm also landed on the side of the head wolf's body. Oh woo! The head wolf cried out in pain. It was sent flying by Su Zimo's slap. It rolled on the ground and quickly got up. It shook its head and was fine. However, Su Zimo was already at the end of his rope. Although the sharp wolf claws did not penetrate his chest, they still scratched his chest until it was a bloody mess. Su Zimo was sent flying by the strength of the head wolf. His body was like a kite with a broken string. He was thrown high up and fell into the pack of wolves. Su Zimo felt weak all over. He looked around and saw many wolves with their mouths wide open. Saliva flowed out, waiting for the moment he fell so that they could tear him into pieces. I couldn't make it in the end. Su Zimo's consciousness began to blur. Just as Su Zimo was about to fall into the pack of wolves, a figure suddenly flashed in the darkness. It swayed in midair and brought Su Zimo out of the pack of wolves' mouths. Chapter 16. Miss Dai. Su Zimo's mind jolted as he rejected that thought. The person who grabbed him was tall and strong. His body was covered with long hair, and he emitted a nauseating smell. How could it be Dai? Su Zimo tried his best to open his eyes, trying to see the person's appearance clearly. However, a wave of exhaustion surged in his heart and Su Zimo's vision became increasingly blurry. He could only vaguely see that the black figure seemed to be holding something in his hand. He swung around in the air above the canyon at an extremely fast speed. He was agile and light. In a short while, he had leaped to the top of the canyon and escaped the encirclement of the wolf pack. Jie. The black figure turned back and looked at the many wolves in the canyon. He let out a burst of creepy laughter. After which, he carried Su Zimo and scurried away. His figure disappeared into the forest. After an unknown period of time, Su Zimo woke up slowly. He struggled to sit up. He felt pain all over his body and his muscles and bones were numb. Su Zimo lowered his head and saw that the wounds on his body had been smeared with a layer of unknown medicinal herbs. There was a faint cooling sensation. He did not know what was smeared on the parts that were not injured. It emitted a pungent smell that was unpleasant to the nose. Su Zimo frowned slightly and looked around. This was a cave. It was rather spacious and did not have any special decorations. However, there were many wolf skins hanging on the walls. At this moment, a rustling sound came from the entrance of the cave. A tall figure entered. His footsteps were a little strange. He seemed to be jumping and hopping on the ground. Su Zimo focused his gaze and was stunned on the spot. The person who entered was not a human but a monkey. He was actually saved by a monkey? Su Zimo had mixed feelings. For the past 6 months, he had killed at least 800 spirit beasts in Songlang Mountain Range. He did not expect that he would be saved by a spirit monkey in the end. This spirit monkey looked very ordinary. It was just that its arms were extremely long. They hung down naturally and completely exceeded its knees. Moreover, there was a red glow in the depths of its eyes. It was somewhat strange. Thank you. Su Zimo cupped his fists at the spirit monkey. The spirit monkey curled its lips in an extremely human-like manner. It did not appreciate Suzimo's gratitude. It waved its arms, pointed at the wolf skin hanging on the wall and cried out for a while. In the end, the spirit monkey pointed at Suzimo, stretched out a finger and shook it contemptuously. He had become a demon. Besides not knowing how to speak, this spirit monkey was no different from an ordinary person. The spirit monkey could even perfectly express the emotions of an adult through gestures and expressions. Suzimo couldn't help but laugh. He asked tentatively, "Are you saying that you didn't want to save me at all? It's just because you have a grudge against these wolves?" The spirit monkey grinned and nodded. "In that case, we have a common enemy. We can work together in the future." Suzimo had been cooped up in Songlang mountain range for half a year. He also wanted to find someone to talk to. The spirit monkey in front of him had extremely high intelligence and was no different from a human. It was a good person to talk to. Bah! The spirit monkey spat. Its face was full of disdain. It made a disdainful gesture at Suzimo, as if mocking Suzimo for being too weak. Suzimo was dumbfounded. He was actually despised by a monkey. After all, this was the monkey who saved his life. Suzimo could not say anything. He looked a little embarrassed. Suzimo looked at the sky through the hole. Suddenly, a doubt arose in his heart. It had been at least a day since he fainted. Why did the pack of wolves not chase after him this time? Smelling the strong and pungent smell on his body, Suzimo's eyes lit up. He could not help but ask, "Do you have any way to conceal my smell and avoid the wolves' sense of smell?" JJJJ. Upon hearing this question, the spirit monkey opened its big mouth and laughed proudly. Its eyes were full of ridicule. Looking at the spirit monkey's eyes, Suzimo suddenly had an ominous premonition. The spirit monkey bent its body, squatted down and made a defecating posture. Its palms were placed below the buttocks. Thereafter it wiped its body randomly. "Is the thing smeared on my body your feces?" Suzimo's face was ghastly pale. He asked with difficulty. "Jjjj." The spirit beast raised its head and laughed loudly. It waved its arms and jumped around on the spot, as if it had done something proud. Suzimo felt as if he was struck by lightning. He resisted the urge to swear. He gritted his teeth and said word by word, "You damn monkey." Seeing that Suzimo was disgusted, the spirit monkey was even happier. It could not stop crying and was extremely excited. Suzimo gritted his teeth and said, "Damn monkey, wait till I recover from my injuries. I will definitely fight with you." The spirit monkey did not seem to mind. It just stood on the spot, placed its hands on its waist and laughed arrogantly. Suzimo's entire body was in pain. For the time being, he could not do anything to it. He lay on the ground and tried his best to calm himself down. Just as he lay down, Suzimo saw a red fruit swaying not far above his head. It was very juicy and exuded a tempting fragrance. Suzimo felt that his mouth and tongue were dry. Without thinking much, he reached out and plucked the red fruit and stuffed it into his mouth. The fruit melted in his mouth. The sweet juice turned into a warm current and flowed into his stomach. The spirit monkey inadvertently saw this scene. Its pupils contracted and its laughter stopped abruptly. Suzimo smacked his lips. He felt that this fruit tasted good and wanted to look for another one. However, he suddenly sensed a murderous aura in the cave. The air seemed to have solidified. "Oh!" Suzimo was shocked. He sat up instinctively and almost bumped into the spirit monkey's big face. The spirit monkey glared with a pair of blood-red eyes. It bared its teeth and was panting heavily. It looked like it could not wait to tear Suzimo into pieces. Suzimo's heart skipped a beat. He vaguely guessed that the fruit that he had eaten just now was most likely not ordinary. "Cough, you disgusted me. I ate your fruit. We are even." Suzimo felt a little guilty. "Ow ow." Upon hearing Suzimo's words, the spirit monkey was furious. It jumped up from the ground, thumping its chest and stamping its feet, making loud banging sounds. The spirit monkey went crazy and banged its head against the mountain wall at the side. The mountain rocks shattered and splattered in all directions. The momentum was terrifying. Suzimo was secretly shocked. This spirit monkey was extremely powerful. Even if he was in his best condition, he might not be its match. Fortunately, The spirit monkey did not vent its anger on him. It just kept pounding the mountain rocks, as if it wanted to break through the mountain wall at the side. At this moment, Suzimo suddenly felt that his abdomen was gradually heating up. It became boiling hot. Waves of warmth flowed to his limbs and bones, emitting endless heat. Suzimo's skin started to turn red. It was as if there was a huge furnace in his body that was roasting his body. The swelling pain was unbearable. Thus, Suzimo gasped. He looked down and saw that the flesh around the wound on his body was wriggling crazily. At a speed that was visible to the naked eye, the flesh was knitting together and healing, leaving behind scars. In the blink of an eye, the scars fell off and the skin was regenerated. Even the piece of flesh that was torn off by the wolf on his thigh was regenerating crazily at this moment. Ah! Suzimo howled to the sky. He felt as if his entire body was about to explode. Oh no, this surge of energy is too strong. If this goes on, my body will explode. Suzimo did not have time to think. He circulated the body tempering and tendons transformation meridians immediately and started breathing and expelling. At the same time, Suzimo leaped up and executed the plow heaven stride. He dashed around the cave crazily. He kept practicing the moves from the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, wanting to vent this surge of energy. The spirit monkey seemed to be frightened by this scene. It stopped going crazy and stared at Suzimo, who was even crazier than it was, dumbfounded. A surge of unbearable essence energy was running rampant in Suzimo's body, nourishing his flesh, tempering his skin and stretching his tendons. His body tempering and tendons transformation realms were improving rapidly. Clang! 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 The tendons in Suzimo's body shook, and the sound of a bowstring vibrating could be heard. Initial success of tendons transformation. His body's flexibility and agility had improved. His footsteps were obviously lighter and his strength was increasing rapidly. According to Daiyu, as long as he achieved initial success of tendons transformation, Suzimo's strength would be enough to threaten a level 8 Chi refinement warrior. But even so, Suzimo was still unable to neutralize the huge surge of essence energy in his body. Suzimo's skin cracked and his body was covered in bloody scars. He looked hideous and frightening. What exactly is this thing? Suzimo was shocked. He did not expect that his life would be in danger just by eating a random fruit. In actual fact, this red fruit was extremely famous in the cultivation world. It was a spiritual item, the scarlet flame fruit, that bloomed and bore fruit once in 1,000 years. The essence energy contained in the scarlet flame fruit was huge and rich. It was a great tonic. Its medicinal properties were like fire, scorching and violent. No one dared to eat it raw. Most of them supplemented it with other spirit herbs to refine elixirs to neutralize the medicinal properties before it could be consumed. If not for the fact that Suzimo cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and had a strong physique, he would have been burned to ashes by the heat inside the scarlet flame fruit the moment he swallowed it. The spirit monkey had been guarding this scarlet flame fruit for many years. These few days were the best time for the scarlet flame fruit to ripen. It had originally intended to pick a day to eat this scarlet flame fruit. Unexpectedly, Suzimo swallowed it in one mouthful, leaving not even the fruit skin behind. One could imagine how frustrated and furious the spirit monkey was just now. But now, seeing Suzimo in such pain, the spirit monkey felt a lingering fear in its heart. The spirit monkey was extremely intelligent. It could naturally tell that even if it were to consume this scarlet flame fruit, its outcome would not be much better. It would be hard to escape death. At the thought of this, the spirit monkey felt a little guilty. No matter what, it was ultimately the reason why Suzimo was in such a predicament. The spirit monkey scratched its ears and cheeks. It looked at Suzimo, who was in extreme pain and whose entire body was red. However, it could not think of any solution. Chapter 17. Under the impact of the scorching essence of the scarlet flame fruit, Suzimo's blood was already boiling. Every time he breathed, he would spit out a stream of red air. Perfected Jean Dan's lifespan was only 500 years. What was the concept of a spiritual object that bloomed and bore fruit once in 1,000 years? This energy was immense and rich. Suzimo could not withstand it at all. He was already considered lucky to be able to hold on for 5 minutes with the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. Ah! Su Zimo looked up to the sky and howled. The energy in his body had nowhere to be released, and it was tormenting him to the point where he wished he was dead. Boom! Su Zimo circulated all the energy in his body and unleashed the mountain lean. He slammed heavily against the stone walls of the cave. The rocks shattered and fell to the ground. Boom! 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 Su Zimo's eyes were red. He kept slamming against the stone walls in front of him, as if he wanted to release all the energy in his body. Every time he slammed, the cave would shake violently. Sand and rocks would fall and the cave could collapse at any time. Once the cave collapsed, it would be equivalent to a mountain crashing down. No matter how strong one's body was, one would be crushed into meat paste. A man and a monkey would be buried here. Su Zimo had already lost his rationality, but the spirit monkey did not. Su Zimo was obviously not going to survive. He was not related to the spirit monkey and had only met by chance. It was the wisest choice for the spirit monkey to escape from this place quickly. But at this moment, there was a flash of hesitation in the spirit monkey's eyes. After hesitating for a while, the spirit monkey did not choose to leave. It stood at the side looking anxious. It kept blinking its eyes, vaguely hoping for a miracle to happen. Rumble! At this moment a loud sound came from the stone walls. The entire mountain shook. Oh! The spirit monkey's eyes lit up. It realized that Su Zimo had actually smashed the stone walls of the cave, and fell into another cave. There was a cave within a cave. The spirit monkey quickly followed. The second cave was extremely narrow and there was a pool in the middle. Cold air permeated the air and it was bone-chilling. Before he could get close, the spirit monkey shivered from the cold and hurriedly stopped in his tracks. The chilling aura emitted by the pool was extremely strong. It was even a little terrifying. When the spirit monkey got closer, a layer of frost appeared on its fur. The chilling aura seeped into its body, as if countless steel needles were piercing its flesh. As for Su Zimo, his entire body was boiling hot. Feeling this bone-chilling cold, he did not resist. Instead, he walked step by step towards the cold pond. The coldness was so strong that no one could withstand it. However, Su Zimo, who had mistakenly eaten the scarlet flame fruit, felt as if there were countless flames burning in his body, which just happened to offset the cold. Su Zimo directly jumped into the cold pond, as if a piece of red-hot iron was put into cold water, making a sizzling sound. Cold and heat, ice and fire. These two completely different powers collided within Su Zimo's body. Su Zimo bobbed up and down in the cold pond. His figure was faintly discernible. Mist rose up and lingered around him, making him look like a fairyland. The spirit monkey stood at a distance and watched this scene. He vaguely guessed that Su Zimo had managed to tide over this calamity by a freak combination of factors. There was an ancient saying that there would definitely be an antidote within 7 steps of a highly toxic object. Everything in the world had mutual engendering and restraining each other. This was an unchanging law of nature. An extreme spirit fruit like the scarlet flame fruit was nurtured in the cave. Not far away, there would be an extremely cold object accompanying it. Su Zimo had mistakenly eaten the scarlet flame fruit. Originally, he could not withstand this immense energy. However, he discovered the cold pond by chance. With the help of the chilling aura, he suppressed this scorching hot essence and sealed it in every inch of his body. Given Su Zimo's current body, he was still unable to digest this scorching hot essence. However, it was sealed in his body. This was a huge treasure trove. Every time he cultivated, he would refine the essence within until he absorbed all the energy of the scarlet flame fruit. This would be extremely beneficial to Su Zimo's advancement in the future. From the moment he leaped into the cold pond, Su Zimo had already regained his consciousness. After a while, he sensed that the energy of the scarlet flame fruit was sealed in his body and was no longer a threat. Su Zimo was about to jump out of the cold pond when his heart skipped a beat. Since this place nurtured the scarlet flame fruit, would there also be other spirit fruits around the cold pond? The cave where the cold pond was located was narrow and narrow. Su Zimo did not discover anything. If it was as he guessed, then the greatest possibility was that it was under the cold pond. Su Zimo took a deep breath and plunged into the cold pond. The pond water was extremely cold. The strange thing was that there were no signs of it freezing. The deeper Suzimo dived, the greater the pressure he felt. The pond water was also getting colder. After cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, Suzimo's ability to hold his breath was extremely strong. He could even hold his breath for 15 minutes without breathing. However, the deeper Suzimo dived, the colder his body became. His limbs turned cold and his blood circulation slowed down. The cold pond was bottomless. Suzimo realized that if he continued to swim, he would freeze before he could even see the bottom of the pond. Right then, a red light flashed in the corner of the cold pond. Suzimo focused his gaze. The pond water blocked his vision and he could not see clearly. He could only vaguely make out a gigantic rock at the bottom of the pond. There seemed to be 4 words written on it, but they were extremely blurry. Suzimo slid his arms and swam a little further downstream. He had already reached his body's limit. Suzimo widened his eyes and looked at the gigantic rock. Fire. Among the 4 words, Suzimo could make out 1 word clearly: fire. The other 3 words were still blurry. As the cold air entered his body, Suzimo shivered from the cold. If I continue to stay here, my life might really be in danger. Suzimo did not dare to stay any longer. He moved his limbs and swam towards the surface of the pond. After a while, Suzimo climbed out of the cold pond. His hair and eyebrows were covered with a layer of frost. His lips were purple and his face was pale. Huff! Suzimo panted heavily. White steam was rising from the top of his head. Ooh! Not far away, the spirit monkey let out a series of cries. It stared at Suzimo anxiously and gestured to Suzimo. It seemed to be asking how Suzimo was doing. I'm fine. Suzimo smiled. After a while, he stood up and left the vicinity of the cold pond. After this ordeal, Suzimo profited from the disaster. Not only did he achieve initial success in the tendon's transformation section, but there was also a huge source of energy sealed in his body. This meant that even if Suzimo did not eat or drink in the future, he could cultivate at any time and refine and absorb the essence energy sealed in his body. Suzimo was in a good mood. He patted the spirit monkey's shoulder and smiled. Stupid monkey. Thank you! Exclamation point. The spirit monkey looked up to the sky and snorted. It did not appreciate Suzimo's gratitude at all. Suzimo laughed involuntarily. This monkey was very proud. Suzimo had some understanding of its temperament. Suzimo went to the side and stood with his legs apart. He was prepared to cultivate the Sanguine Ape 3 styles of the tendon's transformation section: Sanguine Ape Hanging Seal, Sanguine Ape Fruit Offering, and Sanguine Ape Transformation. The first 2 styles were killer moves. The third style was the core. Dayu had warned Suzimo before that he should not use the Sanguine Ape transformation unless his life was on the line. When he was surrounded by the wolf pack in the valley, Suzimo did not release the Sanguine Ape transformation because he had not achieved initial success in the tendon's transformation section. Once he released it, his tendons would break and his flesh would explode. He would die on the spot. The python's tendons were flexible while the ape's tendons were tough. The consequence of cultivating the ape first was that one's tendons would not be able to withstand the tough and fierce force. Under the pulling and shaking, one would be completely crippled. This was also the reason why one had to cultivate the python before the ape. Suzimo adjusted his breathing slightly. His figure dashed forward. His left fist covered his chest and his right fist swung out. It drew an arc in the air and smashed down. Sanguine Ape Seal. Right on the heels of that, Suzimo retracted his fist. He bent his knees and shrank his body like a nimble monkey. He seemed to be kneeling on one knee. His palms were clasped together as if he was holding a fruit and lifted it upwards. Sanguine Ape Fruit Offering. Regardless of the name or posture, these 2 styles did not seem like killer moves. Suzimo could not figure it out no matter how hard he thought. He kept feeling that he was lacking something in his practice. JJJJ. At this moment, a wave of unbridled laughter came from the side. Suzimo turned back and saw the spirit monkey sitting on the ground. It pointed at Suzimo and grinned. Its eyes were filled with mockery and contempt. The only thing missing was the word stupid written on its face. I am despised by this damn monkey again. Suzimo glared at it and said, What's wrong with you again? The spirit monkey stopped mocking and leaped up. Suddenly it dashed towards Suzimo. Its left hand covered its chest while its right hand clenched into a fist. It drew an arc in the air and smashed down on Suzimo's head. Oh! Suzimo's expression changed drastically. The spirit monkey's punch was exactly the same as the stance of the sanguine ape seal. It was even more ruthless and ferocious than his punch. It was ferocious and domineering. Previously, Suzimo did not understand how to explain the seal in the sanguine ape seal. Now that he saw the spirit monkey's punch smashing down, he was enlightened. The spirit monkey clenched its fist tightly. Its greenish-black veins were exposed and protruding its flesh. Its fist swelled up in like a huge seal. It smashed down with a loud bang. Under this punch there was an explosive sound in the air. So that was the case. After tendon's transformation, one would make use of the strength of the large veins to tighten the skin and flesh. The veins and flesh would be intertwined and the fist would be the seal. This was the essence of the sanguine ape seal. When a person's fist smashed down, how powerful and domineering could it be? If it was a huge seal that smashed down, what would be the effect? Suzimo and the spirit monkey used the same move. However, it was in two completely different realms. The impact of the force was as different as clouds and earth. Chapter 18. Suzimo was already shocked when the spirit monkey suddenly used such a ferocious sanguine ape seal. In addition, Suzimo suddenly comprehended the essence of this move. He was slightly distracted and the spirit monkey's punch landed squarely on his face. This punch was extremely heavy. Suzimo was caught off guard and was sent flying. He crashed into the stone wall of the cave, creating a huge pit. Dense cracks appeared around the stone wall. Suzimo was stunned by the punch. This monkey was still laughing happily just a moment ago. The next moment, it turned hostile and hit him. It was completely unreasonable. In fact, although the spirit monkey was already psychic and had wisdom, it did not know the ways of the world. It was not involved in the scheming and deceit of the mortal world. In the forest, the only communication between the demon race was through combat. The spirit monkey was simple-minded. It retained the most primitive wildness in life. It would fight whenever it wanted to and laugh whenever it wanted to. The reason why it saved Suzimo was because it had a feud with the wolf. It did not care whether Suzimo was a human or a demon. The spirit monkey did not even think of restraining its strength when it punched. If not for the fact that Suzimo had cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, swallowed the scarlet flame fruit and achieved initial success in body tempering and tendons transformation, this sanguine ape seal could have beaten him half to death. Suzimo touched the fresh blood dripping from his nose. He said with a black face, "Damn monkey, you want to fight, right?" Ooh. The spirit monkey was very disdainful. It hooked its finger at Suzimo, making a provocative gesture and barking incessantly. Without a word, Suzimo flipped over and stood up. He released Plow Heaven's stride and appeared in front of the spirit monkey in the blink of an eye. He flipped his palm and released a force that could split the ground. Boom! Ooh! The spirit monkey shuddered. It seemed to be shocked by the force of Plow Heaven's stride combined with the earth-shattering palm. The spirit monkey seemed to be able to feel the power of the earth-shattering palm. It did not want to fight it head-on. It tapped its toes on the ground and retreated with a swoosh. Its speed was extremely fast and its movements were light. Suzimo did not mind that his palm had missed, and continued to press forward. After half a year of life and death experiences, Suzimo had not only cultivated his spiritual sense, but also his close combat strength. He had also honed all kinds of fighting skills. Suzimo took advantage of the situation and clenched his fists tightly. Suddenly, he extended them out from under his abdomen. His knuckles protruded like a pair of bull horns and pierced the spirit monkey's chest. Seeing this move, the spirit monkey advanced instead of retreating. Its body curled up and one of its knees seemed to be kneeling. While it avoided the bovine's moon-gazing, its palms seemed to be holding a fruit as it lifted them up. Blood ape fruit offering. When this move was executed by the spirit monkey, Suzimo could not sense any killing intent at all. The way the blood ape presented the fruit looked like a person kneeling on one knee and bowing his head in obedience. But for some reason, Suzimo suddenly felt his scalp tingle, and all the hair on his body stood on end. The spiritual sense he had cultivated told him that there was a great killing move hidden behind this move. Suzimo narrowed his eyes and retreated rapidly. At the same time, he paid attention to the spirit monkey's subsequent actions. Bang! 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 The spirit monkey's body was originally curled up. However, when it came to Suzimo, it suddenly bounced up. The tendons in its body trembled and the sound of the bowstring could be heard. Killing intent gushed out and was suddenly released. A flash of inspiration flashed across Suzimo's mind. He vaguely grasped the essence of the sanguine ape seal. On the one hand, the tendons contracted and then suddenly extended. This would result in an explosion of stronger power. On the other hand, the sanguine ape seal was a move to show weakness first, restrain one's killing intent, and then counterattack. The ape loved to eat things like peaches and fruits the most. Now that it had offered the fruit, it was abnormal. When it offered the fruit, it proved that the ape had the intention to kill. Bam! 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 Suzimo and the spirit monkey fought continuously in this cave. Their feet collided and the wind from their palms was like a knife. Suzimo's combat techniques were open and unrestrained. They were firm and ferocious. Twisting and turning, they carried a force that could split the heavens and earth. After a while, he suppressed the spirit monkey. However, it was not an easy task for Suzimo to defeat the spirit monkey. The spirit monkey realized that it was difficult to gain the upper hand in a fight. Hence, it started to rely on its light and agile movements to move around Suzimo. Of course, from the beginning to the end, Suzimo did not use his full strength. Therefore, even though the spirit monkey was occasionally flipped over by Suzimo's palm and was in so much pain that it bared its teeth and cried out loudly, it could still stand up and continue fighting. The spirit monkey was extremely belligerent. As for Suzimo, not only did he want to temper his martial techniques, he also wanted to fully comprehend the essence of the Sanguine Ape 3 styles. Although the man and monkey did not have much interaction, they had an indescribable tacit understanding. For the rest of the time, Suzimo stayed in this cave. Once in a while, the man and monkey would go out and find trouble with the wolf clan. After killing many wolves, they would escape without waiting for the wolves to surround them. Of course, Suzimo would not use the spirit monkey's feces no matter what. Instead, he found a type of herbal medicine that could conceal his scent and avoid the wolf clan's sense of smell. Outside the cave, Suzimo and the spirit monkey worked together to kill the wolves. However, when they returned to the cave, the man and monkey would not exchange more than a few words before they started fighting. In the end, when the spirit monkey saw that it could not gain the upper hand, it felt indignant and started to launch sneak attacks. Sometimes, when Suzimo was resting and sleeping, the spirit monkey would sneakily come up and punch him. Thereafter, it would turn around and flee. It would hide at a distance and make funny faces at Suzimo. It would laugh arrogantly like a victorious general. As time passed, Suzimo's spiritual senses became sharper. The spirit monkey's sneak attacks could hardly succeed. In the blink of an eye, more than 5 months had passed. The 1-year survival test in Songlang mountain range was nearing its end. During this period of time, Suzimo had been refining the power of the scarlet flame fruit, while devouring flesh and blood. His body tempering and tendons transformation realms continued to rise, and he was moving towards the realm of greater mastery. Suzimo's body was coordinated, could be hard or soft. His footsteps were as light as a leopard cat. He walked silently and left no traces when he stepped on the snow. He leaped and shuttled through the dense forest like an ape. With the help of the ancient tree branches, his feet did not touch the ground. Of course, to Suzimo, his close combat ability had improved the most. In Songlang mountain range, there were not many spirit beasts that could fight with Suzimo without being defeated. The man and monkey had already become the overlords of a region. Many spirit beasts would choose to retreat when they saw them. Suzimo had always felt that the cold lake in the cave was not ordinary. During this period, he had dived into the depths of the cold lake several times, wanting to find out what was going on. However, before Suzimo could dive to the bottom of the lake, the bone-chilling cold had already seeped into his body. His blood circulation slowed down and there were signs of freezing. He returned empty-handed every time. This day, Su Zimo planned to explore the cold lake one last time before leaving Songlang mountain range. Not long after, Su Zimo climbed up. He could not hide the disappointment in his eyes and shook his head. Still did not work. The body tempering and tendons transformation sections tempered the skin, flesh and tendons. In the depths of the cold lake, the skin, flesh and tendons could withstand the erosion of the cold air. However, when the cold air entered the bones and seeped into the blood vessels, Su Zimo could not withstand it. In the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, the two sections after tendons transformation were bone strengthening and marrow cleansing. It seems that only after cultivating the marrow cleansing section will I have the ability to approach the bottom of the cold lake. When that time comes, I can come and explore again, Su Zimo thought to himself. The spirit monkey was nowhere to be found. Perhaps it had gone out to find trouble with the Songlang clan again. Su Zimo was not worried. The spirit monkey was extremely alert and intelligent. Although there were many spirit beasts in Songlang mountain range, it was very difficult for them to hurt it. Furthermore, during this period of time, the spirit monkey had been fighting with Su Zimo constantly. Its abilities had also improved by quite a bit. What made Su Zimo most curious was that the spirit monkey seemed to have learned the tendons transformation section. Not only did the spirit monkey know the Sanguine Ape 3 styles, even its daily breathing and expiration were extremely similar to the content of the tendons transformation section. However, there were some differences. This was a little strange. Su Zimo had asked the spirit monkey before. The spirit monkey seemed to be very evasive about this matter and avoided answering. Later on, Su Zimo did not pursue the matter any further. This day, Su Zimo did not go out. He planned to wait for the spirit monkey to return before bidding it farewell and returning to Pingyang town. A year had passed. Su Zimo missed the Su family very much. He missed his elder brother and younger sister. Of course, Su Zimo was also secretly looking forward to seeing Daiyu again. In the blink of an eye, the sun gradually set. It was already close to evening. The spirit monkey had not returned yet. Su Zimo frowned slightly. A glint of worry flashed across his eyes. The nights in Songlang mountain range were still terrifying. Terrifying spirit demons would often appear to hunt for food. Although Su Zimo and the spirit monkey were powerful, they were still unable to fight against the spirit demons. Therefore, before night fell, they would all return to the cave in advance. There had never been a situation where the spirit monkey did not return for an entire day. Su Zimo felt uneasy. He suddenly got up, drew out the thunderbolt saber that was inserted into the stone wall, tied it behind his back and walked out of the cave.